Hello, everyone. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in Naruto with MOKUTON, Part 2. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
The sandy ground of Training Ground 3 shimmered under the brutal afternoon sun, heat waves warping the air. Roshi stood at the center of the field, his sharp gaze flicking between the two figures before him. Uchiha Itachi, clad in a dark blue clan uniform, stood straight-backed, sweat trickling down his youthful yet taut cheeks. His dark eyes fixed on his opponent with unwavering intensity. At just 8 years old, his slender frame seemed almost too small for the vast training ground. Opposite him, Anko Mitarashi wore a faded black mesh shirt and shorts. Her purple hair clung to her temples with sweat, her hands shoved casually into her pockets. Her posture was loose, but her sharp glance at Itachi betrayed the readiness of a coiled spring. Live combat assessment. Roshi's voice cut through the heated air. Show me how you cooperate effectively. Rule: stop before causing serious injury. Begin. Whoosh. Itachi moved first. His body blurred into an afterimage, speed ghost-like among his peers. Yet to Anko's eyes, his path was clear. 3 shuriken whistled through the air with a shriek, aimed not to kill but to disable her shoulder, her knee, and her wrist. Anko exhaled through her nose in a sharp snort. Her body snapped forward like a released spring, swift and fluid, every motion echoing Orochimaru's taijutsu drills. With a single, precise sidestep, the shuriken grazed her clothes and buried themselves deep into the sand. Fire release. Flame bullet. Anko's seals blurred, faster than a blink. 3 condensed fireballs roared forward like cannon shells, closing in on Itachi in a triangular net of heat and flame. His pupils tightened. His Sharingan had not yet been revealed. Faced with the searing onslaught, he stomped hard and veered right. The fireballs tore past his arm, the scorching airflow searing his skin and nearly throwing him off balance. HMPH. Anko pounced on his stumble. From her sleeve, her hand shot forward like a striking viper. Hidden shadow snake hands. 2 venomous snakes burst out with a hiss, scales glinting, striking at Itachi's ankles where he had just landed. In that instant, his eyes bled red. Twin Tomo spun to life. The snake's strike slowed in his vision, every muscle twitched clear. He twisted violently, barely grazing free, the cold brush of scales raising the hairs on his legs. But the awkward dodge sent him staggering. Anko lunged, a cannonball of speed and killing intent. In the blink of an eye, Itachi's Tomo spun faster. He didn't resist the stumble, he let it carry him backward, his small body bending as though broken. Anko bore down, fist aimed straight for his ribs, yet her focus wavered. Harsh lights. Snake eyes, slitted and uncaring, abandoning her without a glance. A genjutsu. Her mind froze, terror flooding her vision. Though she snapped herself free an instant later, her body lagged, her attack faltering for just a breath. And that was enough. Bang. Her fist struck only wood, the Itachi before her dissolving into a substitution log. The real Itachi emerged silently in her blind spot, blade pressed cold and steady against the fabric of her back. Not piercing, just a reminder. Time stopped. Anko froze mid-strike, every sense alive to the faint breath of Itachi behind her and the bite of steel at her back. That's enough. Roshi's voice broke the silence. The Tomo faded. Itachi stepped back, his small chest rising and falling, his face flushed but calm. He wiped the sweat from his brow, retrieved his water bottle, and drank in small, careful sips. Anko turned stiffly, as if her body had rusted. Frustration surged like a tide, cold and bitter. She had lost. Lost to an 8-year-old boy. Is this why you left me, Orochimaru-sensei? Her pale lips pressed together, her face drained of color. Then, unable to contain it, she spun and drove her fist into a wooden post. Bang! The post cracked with a sunken imprint of her fist. Roshi glanced at the two, one calm, one trembling, without comment. He moved to the corner, retrieving a cloth bag. Instead of weapons, It carried neatly wrapped rice balls and a bamboo flask. "Take a break," Roshi said evenly, his tone oddly domestic. He handed one rice ball to Itachi, then held the other out to Anko. Anko's shoulders were stiff, trembling. "Steamed before I left. Chicken filling, teriyaki flavor. Not bad," Roshi said casually. "After fighting, you should at least eat." "I don't," she began hotly, but the rich aroma of warm rice and sweet savory chicken cut her words short. The scent was worlds apart from her usual stale noodles and cheap dango. It pried at her defenses with gentle insistence. Roshi didn't push. He simply kept the rice ball extended, then sat down, unwrapping one for himself. He ate with calm, unhurried bites, poured himself tea, and leaned against the post as if he were in his own backyard. Itachi ate quietly too, savoring the chicken in small mouthfuls. Anko stared at the rice ball, then at Roshi's unshaken profile, then at her own fist print on the post. The warm smell mingled with her exhaustion, dissolving her anger into a dull, heavy fatigue. She finally snatched the rice ball, biting into it as if to vent her frustration. The burst of teriyaki flavor soothed her more than she wanted to admit. The three of them ate in silence. The only sounds were chewing, swallowing, and the faint whisper of wind over hot sand. Roshi made no remarks about the battle, his composure steady as stone. When the food was gone, he quietly packed the wrappers, rose, and brushed the dust from his pants. Roshi walked to the center of the field, his gaze sweeping briefly over Itachi, who had recovered somewhat, before settling on Anko, who had silently finished her rice ball. Her eyes remained shadowed, dark and complex. "Feeling better?" Roshi's tone was steady, probing. "Good. Next, both of you, together, try to attack me." He stood there casually, hands at his sides, no stance, no seals. His relaxed posture made it seem less like a fight and more like an idle exercise. Anko's head snapped up. Surprise flickered across her eyes, quickly replaced by a rekindled fire, stubborn, hungry, unwilling. She glanced at Itachi, then back at their maddeningly calm captain. Itachi's gaze sharpened. Though his sharing and lay dormant, his focus regathered. Their eyes met briefly, silent agreement passing between them. "All right." Anko growled. Her hands blurred. Ninja art, snake net binding. Chakra coiled into serpentine shadows, slithering out to constrict Roshi's flanks and rear, hemming him in like living walls. Her seal shifted again, fire release, dragon fire jutsu. And a spear of flame screamed forward, straight for Roshi's chest. At that moment, Itachi's form melted into shadow. He did not follow Anko's direct assault but instead circled wide, reading Roshi's movements with uncanny precision. Shuriken spun from his hands, cutting strange arcs through the air, aimed at Roshi's ankles, knees, and every point of balance. The timing was flawless, the flame at the front, serpents at the rear, and Shuriken closing the gaps. A perfect pincer. Roshi's face didn't flicker. Water release, water wall. A thick surge erupted upward, intercepting the dragon fire. Steam hissed violently into the air, blinding the field in a cloud of white mist. Hidden within it, Roshi shifted half a step, the smallest of movements, just enough. Itachi's shuriken grazed harmlessly past, thudding into the sand. At the same time, Roshi's right hand flicked outward. Wind release, wind reversal. Air swirled violently, twisting Anko's chakra serpents into a vortex. Their hissing cries tore through the mist before they unraveled and dissipated. TCH. Anko's hands blurred again. Ninja art, hidden shadow multi-snake hands. This time, 8 real serpents exploded outward, scales glinting as they lunged at Roshi from every angle. Roshi leaned back, unfazed, foot stamping the earth. Earth release, rock spikes. Stone pillars shot upward, skewering 2 of the snakes mid-lunge. The rest scattered with furious hisses. And in that heartbeat of distraction, Itachi struck. Kunai gleamed, his Sharingan locking onto every twitch of Roshi's body. He aimed for the exposed ribs of Roshi's backward-leaning posture. But Roshi moved as if he had eyes in his back. His body twisted sideways at an impossible angle, the kunai kissing only air. He spun with the momentum, hands flashing through seals. Wind release, wind cutter jutsu. Invisible blades shrieked through the mist, slashing straight for Itachi's joints. Danger flared in Itachi's chest. His tomo spun to life. The invisible blade slowed into deadly clarity, forcing him into a desperate backbend and a crossed kunai guard. Clang! Clang! The clash rattled his arms to the bone. He staggered back, fresh gouges carved into his kunai. Anko seized her chance. Her fingers blurred, eyes gleaming. Fire release, Serpent's Fangs barrage. 10 sharp, fang-shaped fireballs erupted from her lips, streaking toward Roshi. Unlike before, these weren't random blasts. They darted like living predators, arcing in from vicious angles toward his vitals. Their speed and precision outstripped her earlier jutsu. Roshi remained calm. Earth release, Earth-style wall. The ground surged upward, forming a massive stone barrier. Bang! 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 The fireball struck, exploding into sparks and smoke, the wall holding firm until the barrage faded. Anko was panting now, sweat dripping down her temples. The strain of chaining jutsu was catching up to her. Stop! Roshi's voice cut through the haze. The earth wall crumbled back into sand. Roshi brushed invisible dust from his sleeves, his breathing unchanged, as if all of this had been nothing more than a warm-up. I've seen enough. His gaze slid over the two, both visibly winded. For the next few days, we'll continue training here, refining your coordination. He raised one finger. Of course, this kind of training drains energy. Itachi, unsurprised, quietly sipped his water, already knowing what was coming. As captain, I'll take responsibility. Roshi's lips curved into the faintest smile. His eyes moved between them. With this much chakra spent, how about replenishing with meat? My treat. Konoha's streets glowed softly in the embrace of twilight. The air was thick with the aromas of dinner drifting from countless homes, mingling with the fresh scent of greenery carried in the evening breeze. Roshi led the two down a quieter alley, stopping before a shop marked by an indigo blue curtain. The fabric bore an old-style character for pot, embroidered in white thread. From within came a warm yellow glow and faint, sweet steam that curled lazily into the night air. When Roshi pushed the curtain aside, a rich fragrance, soy sauce, sugar, mirin, and the savory fat of prime beef, washed over them like a welcoming embrace. The dining area inside was small, its natural wood furnishings softened by cushions around low tables. Only a handful of customers spoke in subdued tones, giving the room a hushed, intimate atmosphere. Unlike the noisy bustle of a yakiniku joint, this place radiated the simple, homely comfort of hot pot cuisine. Welcome. The proprietress, clad in a plain kimono, greeted them with a gentle smile before leading them to a table tucked at the back. Embedded in its center was a black clay pot atop a small gas stove. Sukiyaki for 3, Roshi ordered smoothly, his eyes sliding to Anko and Itachi. That all right? He already knew their taste for sweeter flavors. Anko's eager nod came instantly, her eyes locked on the menu. Yes, of course, she exclaimed. Itachi only offered a quiet though the faint anticipation in his eyes betrayed his calm front. The homely air of the shop gave him an unusual sense of ease. Special selection beef, tofu, konjac noodles, shiitake and enoki mushrooms, shungaku, leeks, and aizu udon, Roshi continued, rattling off the sides without hesitation. 1 raw egg each for dipping. The proprietress nodded cheerfully and disappeared toward the kitchen. Soon, the clay pot was set before them, filled with a glossy dark brown broth. The stove hissed to life, blue flames licking the bottom as tiny bubbles broke the surface. The sweet aroma thickened, curling upward in steamy tendrils. Then came the side dishes, thin slices of marbled wagyu, frosted with veins of fat, soft white cubes of tofu, translucent gray konjac noodles, plump shiitake caps, slender enoki, crisp greens, and diagonally cut leeks. Alongside them, 3 bowls of beaten raw egg gleamed pale gold. As the broth reached a rolling boil, Roshi used long chopsticks to lower several slices of beef into the pot. The meat curled almost instantly, pink giving way to a deeper shade as fat melted into the broth, layering the air with an even richer aroma. Eat the meat first, Roshi instructed. Anko hardly needed telling. She snatched up a glistening slice, dipped it swiftly into the egg, and popped it into her mouth. The tender beef melted across her tongue, the silky egg mellowing the sweetness of the broth into something decadent. She closed her eyes with a muffled sigh. This sweetness is amazing. And the beef, unbelievably tender. Itachi followed, slower but precise. He dipped his beef, then tasted. The umami of the meat, the smooth egg, and the sweet savory broth blended seamlessly, warmth spreading through him. He chewed with quiet focus, though his pace betrayed enjoyment. Behind the rising steam, his eyes softened. Roshi watched their satisfaction before tasting for himself. The meat was rich, its sweetness drawn out by mirin, but his brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. He washed it down with a sip of tea. For hot pot, he still preferred a clear broth, or something with spice. The proprietress returned with the last of the vegetables and the thick strands of eyes udon. Her smile deepened at the sight of them leaning into the bubbling pot. 3 guests, all dishes are here. Please enjoy. Thank you. Roshi inclined his head, then asked casually, You seem busy tonight. Is something special happening? The woman's smile grew warmer. Thanks to customers like you, business is steady. But these past few days, yes, the mood in the village is lighter. She lowered her voice, sharing the news as if it were a gift. Everyone's saying Kumoga Cure is finally sending an official delegation for peace talks. Her eyes shone. After so many years of fighting, people finally feel there's hope. Families are coming out again, eating together. She gestured towards several tables where children laughed quietly beside their parents. Peace talks? Roshi's chopsticks stilled in midair. That such news had already reached ordinary shopkeepers. Delegation. Anko mumbled around a mouthful of broth-soaked shiitake, her words muffled. Is that news really true? Those Kumogakure shinobi weren't exactly the gentle type before. True. A woman seated nearby, dining with her child, couldn't resist joining in. Her expression brimmed with hopeful anticipation. My husband does odd jobs in the administration office. He heard it firsthand. They say the delegation is high-ranking, led by one of the Reikige's closest confidants. With someone like that heading the group, they can't possibly be coming to fight. They must truly want peace. She gently patted her child's head, voice softening. If the war could really end, children might grow up in peace. Yes, peace is worth more than anything. An elderly diner at another table gave a weary sigh. Too much blood has already been spilled on the border. For a moment, the small dining room filled with quiet hopes and wistful murmurs, the clinking of chopsticks softened by the rising steam from simmering broth. Then, like smoke dispersing, the conversation shifted back to food and family, and the proprietress returned to her other customers. Kumoga Cure. Anko swallowed, licking sweet sauce from the corner of her lips. Her playful expression faded, replaced by the sharp scrutiny of a kunoichi. The Reikige's confidant leading the talks? That's a bold move. Makes me wonder what their real game is. It's the natural course, Roshi replied evenly, dropping a perfectly soaked tofu cube onto Itachi's plate. Kumoga Cure can't win outright. Peace talks are their only road forward. As for sincerity, his gaze lingered on the bubbling pot. Words don't matter. It's what they do after, and the price they're willing to pay, that tells the truth. Itachi quietly ate the tofu, tender and saturated with sweet savory broth. His dark eyes studied Roshi's calm profile. Despite losing comrades in border skirmishes, Roshi's voice carried no particular bitterness toward the hidden cloud. Anko puffed her cheeks, uninterested in such practical talk. Bah, forget it. Why think so hard? Her attention darted back to the pot. These konjac noodles, after soaking in the broth, they're heavenly. Owner, another order of konjac noodles. And 4 more plates of beef, Roshi added matter-of-factly. Shinobi appetites were not to be underestimated. Outside, the lamps of Konoha glowed against the deepening blue of twilight. Inside, warmth radiated from the clay pot, filling the shop with the sweet comfort of simmering broth. The three sat together, sharing food and silence, the rich flavors easing the day's fatigue and washing away the tension of training. Anko leaned back at last, sighing in contentment, one hand on her stomach. Itachi set down his chopsticks and sipped his tea, his movements quiet and composed. Roshi took a long sip from his own cup. His eyes drifted, noting Anko's faded mesh top, its black almost gray at the seams, the cuffs fraying from use. Beside her, Itachi wore a neat dark blue uniform, plain, functional, and the standard attire of his clan. Full. Roshi set his teacup down, his voice cutting through the post-meal quiet. Good. While we still have time. He rose to his feet. The team just formed. As captain, I should make some kind of gesture. Anko and Itachi exchanged puzzled glances. Let's go buy a few things, Roshi said casually, as though he were planning their next training exercise. His lips curved faintly. Captain's gifts. No refusing allowed. The lighting inside the shop was dim, casting long shadows across the neatly arranged shelves of shinobi tools. Behind the counter sat a lean, white-haired old man with a monocle perched on his nose. Under the glow of a desk lamp, he patiently filed the edge of a kunai, the rasp of metal against metal steady and unhurried. The curtain rustled as Roshi entered with Anko and Itachi. The old man's gaze lifted. His eyes lingered briefly on the Konoha forehead protector tied across Roshi's brow before sweeping over the two younger shinobi behind him. He gave a slight nod of acknowledgement before returning his gaze to Roshi. 2 sets of combat uniforms, Roshi said, walking up to the counter. Durable material, with built-in cushioning at the joints. The old man set aside the kunai and file, then moved to a back shelf, pulling out several rolls of thick fabric in muted colors. Dark gray, indigo blue, and dark green, he explained. The indigo and dark green are new blends, 30% more elasticity and protection, but they cost 50% more. Roshi turned to his teammates. Pick your own colors. Anko, you also need new weighted leg wraps and arm guards. Yours are worn down. Make sure they meet standard tune-in specs, he added for the old man. For Itachi, the gear needs to be lightweight. Prioritize mobility. Normally, genin wouldn't invest in expensive combat gear. Their missions rarely demanded it. But Itachi wasn't just any genin. He was now part of a team meant for higher-level missions. Anko pouted at the dull fabric options, her eyes drifting away, until they caught on a dark purple, hooded trench coat hanging from a rack nearby. The coat's fabric had a unique matte finish and sharp cuts at the shoulders and elbows, reinforced for battle yet stylish. It radiated a sleek, untamed feel. That counts as protective gear too, right? She asked, pointing at it, her voice almost hopeful. The old man followed her gaze. A combat trench coat. Treated to be light and breathable. A little less protection than a vest. I'll take it. The purple one, in my size. Anko's eyes brightened immediately. Just the sight of that coat seemed to lift her spirits, as though its vivid purple could cut through the shadows lingering in her heart. Itachi quietly pointed toward the indigo blue roll of fabric, then indicated his height with a small gesture. The old man made a note of their choices and disappeared into the back storeroom. While they waited, Itachi's gaze slid toward the glass display beneath the counter. Inside lay rows of specialized shuriken. One design in particular caught his attention, its edges lined with faint reverse serrations, gleaming faintly blue under the lamp. His eyes lingered. Interested? Roshi asked, following his gaze. Those are new Fuma shuriken. Stronger armor-piercing and tearing effects, but harder to control. With your current wrist strength, you'd barely manage. Push it, and you could injure yourself. Next year, when you're stronger, you'll be ready. Itachi gave a short, wordless nod and looked away. The old man returned soon after, carrying the ordered gear. Anko eagerly claimed the dark purple trench coat, running her fingers across the smooth fabric. Itachi accepted his indigo blue uniform with quiet composure. That will be 178,000 ryo, the old man said evenly. Anko froze mid-motion. Her arm stiffened around the trench coat, and she turned wide-eyed toward Roshi. She knew shinobi gear was costly, But this was a fortune. "Captain," she blurted, her voice halfway between disbelief and awe. "You're not secretly a millionaire, are you? Treating us to dinner was one thing, but this gift." She hefted the delicate paper bag in her hand. Roshi didn't so much as flinch. He pulled out his money pouch, thumbed through a thick stack of bills, and handed them over with quiet decisiveness. His gaze slid sideways to Anko, his tone flat but edged with a warning, "If it bothers you that much, you can pay for your own. I earned extra on the last mission." Anko gave an awkward smile, clutching the trench coat tighter to her chest, and wisely said no more. The old man counted the bills and nodded, and the transaction was complete. The trio stepped out into the evening. The sky above was fully dark, Konoha's commercial street glowing brighter beneath lanterns and shop signs. Anko clutched her coat, her expression a little stiff. Itachi carried his package neatly in one arm. Roshi's voice cut through the hum of voices and street noise. "Since we're already on the subject of money, it's time we establish rules for mission pay." He didn't stop walking, his gaze flicking across the two. "From now on, 40% of all earnings go into team funds, for tools, medicine, and consumables." He continued without pause, "Of the remaining 60%, I'll take 40. You two split the rest evenly. Any objections?" Itachi nodded almost instantly, his young face calm, betraying no objection. Roshi was the captain, the strongest among them. Of course he deserved the larger share. Besides, Itachi reasoned, most of the team's public funds wouldn't even be spent on Roshi. His fighting style hardly required the use of tools or consumables. Anko, on the other hand, looked relieved. A grin spread across her face. "In that case, I won't object. Thanks, Captain." The three soon reached a fork in the road, the path splitting toward different districts of the village. Anko, clutching her new gear, waved lazily before disappearing into the bustling crowd drifting toward the apartment blocks. Roshi turned to Itachi. "Want me to walk you to the clan compound gate?" "No need, Captain," Itachi replied, bowing slightly, the indigo-blue paper bag held firmly in his hands. "HM." Roshi said nothing more, striding off toward the western edge of the village. Itachi continued on alone, his steps measured and steady. The tall silhouette of the Uchiha compound walls soon loomed ahead, their solemn presence unmistakable in the faint glow of the street lamps. Just as he rounded the corner, a voice, clear and familiar, slipped out from the deep shadows beneath an old roadside tree. "Itachi, you're back." Itachi didn't falter. His eyes lifted toward the shade. "Shisui." From the darkness, the tree's shadow shifted, and a figure emerged as though born from the night itself. Uchiha Shisui stepped into the dim halo of a lamp, his high-collared dark blue uniform crisp, a short sword strapped across his back. His forehead protector gleamed faintly under the light. He wore his usual easy smile, gentle, effortless, as if it belonged there. His gaze lingered on the paper bag in Itachi's arms. "How was team practice today?" Shisui fell into step beside him without effort, their movements syncing as naturally as breathing. "Captain Roshi is very strong," Itachi said evenly, his voice calm but edged with respect. "After training, he treated Anko-senpai and me to sukiyaki, and bought us ninja tools as gifts." He added, almost as an afterthought, "combat uniforms." Shisui blinked, the faintest note of surprise breaking through his smile. "That's unusually generous. A captain isn't expected to buy equipment for his team." As one of Konoha's top jonin, he knew well the unspoken rules. Tools and gear were almost always a shinobi's personal responsibility, or provided by their clan. Itachi was aware of this too. His previous jonin instructor had been competent, but never this considerate. "Captain Roshi is thoughtful," Itachi murmured, eyes fixed on the lantern-lit road ahead. "Gentle." Shisui's lips curved a little higher. "Do you like him that much?" Itachi's pace faltered for the briefest heartbeat, as though weighing the question carefully. Then he nodded, his voice steady, but with a quiet certainty. "Yes. With Captain Roshi." He hesitated, searching for the right word. "It feels easy. Not like the suffocating weight of clan meetings." Not like the tense atmosphere of the training grounds. And certainly not like the invisible pressure pressing down whenever he stood before his father. With Roshi, he could eat without restraint, receive clear guidance, and glimpse the shape of a life that felt, almost, promising. "Oh? Is that so?" Shisue's voice carried a warmth of genuine relief. "That's good then. To have found such a comrade." His gaze softened. "Truth is, I had been considering applying to Hokage-sama to become your captain myself." Itachi stayed silent, his footsteps light on the stone road. The night air filled with little more than the rhythm of their strides and the faint chorus of crickets. After a few breaths, Itachi finally spoke again, his voice edged with something faintly uncertain. "But Captain Roshi seems to have another identity. Father is very cautious about it." His dark eyes lifted toward Shisui, quietly searching. "Shisui, is there a special clan in Konoha? One without a surname?" "If I had to name one, it would be that clan. The Senju." "Senju?" Itachi slipped off his sandals at the door. The paper bag holding his new indigo combat uniform rested in the shadows near the step. As he walked down the wooden corridor, a door slid open a fraction. A strip of warm yellow light spilled out, framing the silhouette of Uchiha Fugaku. "You're back." His father's voice was quieter than usual, less the stern tone of a clan head, more the voice of a father at home. "Yes, father." Itachi stopped respectfully. Fugaku's gaze drifted to the paper bag. "You bought something." "A gift from my captain." Itachi lifted the bag and offered it forward. Fugaku accepted it, his fingers pressing lightly against the fabric through the paper. He weighed it for a moment before glancing up. "This must have been expensive. Did he only buy it for you?" "Anko-senpai received one as well." "I see." Fugaku handed the bag back, his movements deliberate. "Since it's a gift from your captain, keep it in good order." He paused briefly, then added, "I will prepare a return gift in due course." "Father." Itachi's tone shifted, calm, but edged with inquiry. "HM. The Senju clan," Itachi asked directly, "a clan once as renowned as ours. Where are they now? I've never seen any clan lands allotted to them within the village." The faint warmth in Fugaku's expression drained away, replaced by solemn gravity. Silence stretched between them before he finally spoke. "The Senju stand beyond the boundaries of all other clans. That is what makes them the Senju." Itachi's pupils narrowed. Fugaku went on, voice measured. "The clan declared its dissolution during Lord Hashirama's era. Naturally, there is no Senju compound on the village map. But..." His gaze sharpened. "Every talented shinobi you see without a clan name may well carry Senju blood. Even Lord Tobirama's students, Koharu and Homura, the current advisors, it would not be strange if traces remained." Itachi's voice softened, almost hesitant. "So, the Senju never truly vanished?" Fugaku shook his head slowly. "The dissolution was real. Lord Hashirama and Lord Tobirama themselves enforced it, and every clan witnessed it. But after Lord Tobirama's death, one figure still carried great influence among the Senju's remnants. Through that person, a connection endured, subtle, but resilient." "Was it Lady Tsunade?" Itachi asked. "No." Fugaku's denial was firm. "Tsunadeheim has long since left the village. I speak of another, the former aide to both Senju brothers. Senju Momoka." Momoka. The name stirred ripples within Itachi's mind. He recalled, with sudden clarity, his father's casual-seeming question when Roshi had first been welcomed. "I heard you've been living in the old house in the western suburbs?" Raised and instructed personally by Lady Momoka. The path connected in his thoughts like pieces falling into place. "My captain, he." Itachi's voice carried the weight of realization. Fugaku's gaze fixed sharply on his son, heavy as stone. "If nothing has changed, then after Lady Momoka, the one who still holds those threads together, who preserves that hidden influence." His words cut with precision. "That would be your captain." The air in the Japanese-style room thickened, as if the paper walls themselves were listening. The flame of the oil lamp flickered, crackling faintly in the silence. Fugaku leaned forward, his voice low but commanding, each syllable pressing down with intent. Itachi, this is the Uchiha clan's opportunity. Morning came softly, pale sunlight piercing through the mist over Training Ground 3. The sand shimmered faint gold, and after several days of drills, the field already bore the clear imprint of Roshi squad. Left flank. Itachi, cut him off, don't let him weave signs. Anko's voice rang out, sharp and commanding, carrying the edge she hadn't shown in weeks. She blurred across the sand, her new dark purple windbreaker snapping open like a streak of violet lightning. Her hands flashed through seals. Hidden shadow snake hands. From her sleeves, 3 grey-brown serpents shot forward, not straight at the target, but fanning out to seal its escape routes. Almost simultaneously, Itachi's silhouette flickered into the wooden stake's blind spot. His 2 tomo Sharingan spun, catching the clone's eyes in silence. A whisper of genjutsu surged outward. The enemy shadow clone froze, caught mid-motion. Fire release, great fireball jutsu. Roshi's calm voice came from an angle no one expected. He had already repositioned to the perfect vantage point. A roaring fireball spiraled forth, engulfing the immobilized target hemmed in by snakes. Boom! The explosion scorched the air. Heat shimmered, flames billowed, and the shadow clone dissolved into a puff of white smoke. Seamless coordination. Stop! Roshi raised his hand. Anko lowered hers, panting, strands of hair clinging to her damp forehead. But the defeated slump in her eyes was gone. The spark of a kunoichi had returned. Itachi calmly deactivated his Sharingan, walked to the sideline, and opened his leather notebook, already recording formations, timing, and chakra expenditure. The snake's angle can be tighter, 2 points more restrictive, forcing the target's hand space narrower, Roshi observed, stepping beside Anko. As for that hood, if it cuts your vision at speed, fix it or lose it. Function first. His gaze shifted to Itachi's notes. Good detail. Your genjutsu timing was precise, and chakra flow steadier than yesterday. Anko tugged her hood, grumbling, got it, I'll adjust. But there was no bite in her tone. Itachi simply hummed, already revising diagrams with steady focus. The rough edges between them had been sanded down these past few days, replaced by an unspoken rhythm. 15-minute break. Roshi headed for the tree shade and sat cross-legged. Anko bolted for her canteen, gulped down water, then tore into a biscuit. Itachi sat nearby, sipping quietly, eyes glued to his notes. Roshi, meanwhile, closed his eyes and sank inward. His nightly regimen hadn't faltered, even alongside days of relentless training. But his attempts with natural energy. 7, 8 times out of 10, his wood clones collapsed, structure warped, petrified by the violent backlash. Yet every failure carved a sharper outline of that vast, elusive current. Natural energy. Unlike chakra, born of the physical and spiritual energies of life, it was something deeper, primal, raw power woven into the bones of the world itself. Chaotic, yes, but brimming with overwhelming vitality. The path is right, but something vital is missing. His senju blood, even the hashirama cells in his body, gave him a foundation most could only dream of, yet still, it wasn't enough to contain and refine that power. Captain. Itachi's clear voice pulled him back. The boy held out his notebook, formations neatly drawn. If the opponent were Sensora type and evaded genjutsu early, should the suppression angle of fire release be shifted? Roshi opened his eyes, scanned the diagrams, and gave a nod. Good. Contingency variations are necessary. Training resumed. Again and again, they dissected movements, refined timing, and tested angles. By late morning, Anko's serpents were striking with sharper precision. Itachi's Sharingan was weaving genjutsu with chilling efficiency, and Roshi's ninjutsu support cut in exactly where gaps remained. Piece by piece, a rough but reliable system began to take shape. As noon burned overhead, their shadows shrank. And then, a figure appeared in the tree line, silent as a breath, merging with light and shadow. Standard Anbu uniform, animal mask, and chakra smothered to near nothingness. Roshi, Specials Jonin. The voice was flat, the authority undeniable. Roshi turned at once. Itachi and Anko halted mid-step, wary eyes fixed on the masked intruder. Hokage-sama summons you. The Anbu's words cut through the heat and stillness. Proceed to the Hokage's office. Immediately. Inside the Hokage's office, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat as he always did, smoke curling from his pipe, paperwork spread across his desk. His sharp eyes lifted to Roshi, who had just stepped in. There were no pleasantries, only the blunt words of a leader. Your team building has gone well. Their coordination in recent days has been solid. The third Hokage's voice carried a trace of approval as his gaze settled on Roshi. Based on your judgment, is your team ready for a mission? Anko Mitarashi's mental state has largely stabilized. Roshi answered with deliberate caution. Given that, I judge this team capable of handling a B-rank mission. He emphasized the rank. For their first official deployment, he needed a buffer. He would not allow Konoha to throw them into a firestorm too soon. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed slightly. In the past, Roshi had been direct, confident, even sharp, rarely cautious to the point of restraint. Was this change the scar left by his last mission, where he was gravely injured and a comrade lost? Or was it because of the boy on his squad, the 8-year-old Uchiha with a name too heavy for politics to ignore? The thought flickered and passed. The Hokage pulled a scroll from the pile on his desk. With a casual flick, it landed in Roshi's hands. A B-rank mission. Escort a merchant caravan to D-port. An escort mission? B-rank? Roshi untied the cord and scanned the neat handwriting. Client: Tanzai. Profession: cloth merchant. Cargo: a shipment of fine cloth from the Land of Fire. Destination: D-port. Mission rank: B. On the surface, it looked routine, an international trade escort. Yet the B-rank designation spoke otherwise. D-port lay on the southwestern coast of the Land of Fire, within the peculiar borders of the Land of Tea. The Land of Tea possessed two fragmented enclaves, wedged into the Fire Country's southwestern and southeastern corners, along with two massive offshore islands, Nizaki and Ozu. In sheer territory, it even surpassed the Land of Water. But crucially, the Land of Tea had no shinobi village. Its geography meant it relied heavily on Konoha for protection. Almost every serious commission within its borders flowed straight to the leaf. And yet, if Tanzai's caravan, traveling from Fire Country's heartland to D-port, required B-rank protection, then something else was in play. Roshi lifted his eyes to meet the Hokage's steady gaze. Does this mission have hidden objectives? Escort risk alone could not justify such a rank. You are as perceptive as ever. Hiruzen inhaled from his pipe, the smoke briefly veiling his expression. Recently, a group of rogue shinobi has been active near D-port. They've proven troublesome. Understood. Roshi gave a small nod. Have we gathered detailed intelligence on them? A team of 5, Hiruzen replied, retrieving 2 thinner scrolls from a drawer and laying them on the desk. They call themselves the Black Snake Group. They move in secret and employ dangerous, insidious techniques, not to be underestimated. He pushed the scrolls toward Roshi. This mission carries 2 layers, he continued. First, escort Mr. Tanzai's caravan safely to D-port. Second, investigate the Black Snake Group. Should the opportunity arise, you may choose your course. He tapped the scrolls with his pipe stem. An A-rank directive: eliminate the Black Snake Group. A B-rank directive: scout and gather precise intelligence. Judge accordingly once on site. If the risk is too great, focus solely on the escort and return alive. That is your priority. Hiruzen leaned back, his tone final but steady. For administrative purposes, your team will retain its old designation, Team 5. Roshi's eyes lingered on the scroll marked Team 5. The number of his old squad, the one that had fought and bled with him on the border, from which only he had returned alive, carrying fragments of intelligence. He said nothing, simply taking the 2 additional scrolls detailing the Black Snake Group. Hiruzen rose from behind his desk and walked around, his robes brushing softly against the floor. He laid a hand on Roshi's shoulder, a gesture of comfort, but his gaze wandered past him, out the wide office window toward the bustling heart of Konoha. "The land of tea's commissions are vital to Konoha's finances," he said, his voice low. "We can't afford to lose them." Withdrawing his hand, his tone carried a tinge of weary helplessness. "The Kumogakure delegation will arrive soon, and our forces are stretched thin. Anbu and regular squads are all tied to their security and the peace talks, which leaves only your Team 5 to reach D-Port first and assess the situation." "Yes, Hokage-sama." Roshi's expression betrayed nothing. He gathered the 3 scrolls, turned, and stepped out. The heavy office door closed with a final thud, cutting off the smell of tobacco and the weight of duty. The hallway beyond was dim, but Roshi's steps were steady, his thoughts already racing. The Black Snake Group, rogue shinobi, dangerous unknowns. Investigating them, perhaps even eliminating them, on top of escorting a merchant caravan. The difficulty was far from trivial. Itachi's genius was real, but limited by age and stamina. Anko had recovered her spirit, but her sharpness had not fully returned. For their first mission, carrying dual objectives deep into contested territory, the risks climbed steeply. But the Hokage's meaning had been clear. For 10 long years, Konoha had known only a single year of peace, between year 50 and 51 of the village calendar. Even a village as wealthy as Konoha now bore crushing financial strain. The land of tea could not be abandoned. Team 5. Roshi murmured the number under his breath. The memories it carried, even second-hand, tightened something in his chest. With a long exhale, he forced the thoughts down and quickened his pace, heading for the 3rd training ground. It was time to prepare the new Team 5 for their journey. The sun was already blistering overhead by the time Roshi returned to the training field. Anko was hammering away at a reinforced stake, practicing sharper angles for her hidden shadow snake hands. Sweat plastered her dark purple windbreaker to her back, but her eyes were bright with focus. Off to the side, Itachi sat cross-legged, eyes closed in deep concentration, cycling chakra with the quiet precision of someone beyond his years. Noticing Roshi, Anko stopped and wiped her brow. A spark of anticipation flickered in her gaze. "Captain," the old man, Hokage-sama, what did he want with you? Don't tell me, a big mission." Itachi also opened his eyes, calm but attentive, his focus wholly on Roshi. Walking into the center of the field, Roshi knelt and unrolled the 3 scrolls onto the sand. "Our assignment is a B-rank mission, escort a cloth merchant caravan to D-Port in the land of tea." D-Port. Anko raised a brow. "That place is usually peaceful. A B-rank for that? What? Enemy shinobi causing trouble?" "It was peaceful," Roshi replied evenly. "But now, a rogue group calling themselves the Black Snake Group has appeared near the port. They employ dangerous secret techniques and threaten the trade routes." He tapped the 2 auxiliary scrolls. "The secondary objectives are clear. Gather intelligence on them, also B-rank, or, depending on circumstances, engage and eliminate them. That part is classified A-rank." Anko let out a sharp breath. "A-rank? Our first mission? That's insane." "Hokage-sama left the choice to us," Roshi said firmly. "Our primary duty is to get the caravan to its destination safely. Investigation and combat are secondary, decided on the ground, by our judgment and condition." His gaze swept across them both. "The risk is high. These enemies are unknown, and we cannot underestimate them." He let a pause hang before continuing. "Team 5's objectives. First, escort Tanzai's caravan safely to D-Port. Second, collect as much intelligence on the Black Snake Group as we can, without compromising ourselves. Third, if conditions allow, we move to expel or annihilate them." His eyes locked briefly on each of them. "Understood. Understood." Anko straightened, her earlier disbelief replaced by sharp determination. "Yes, Captain," Itachi replied with crisp clarity. "Good." Roshi rolled up the scrolls. "The caravan leaves tomorrow morning. Prepare your gear, tools, and medicine. Gather at the village gate before 6. Nansho post the sky was only just paling, yet the post town already roared with life. Pack horses neighed and stamped, Cart axles groaned beneath heavy loads, and caravan guards barked rough orders. The air was thick with a mingled scents of livestock, sweat, dust, and the greasy allure of cheap fried food. Carts piled with goods clogged the narrow streets, while porters and merchants darted through gaps like minnows in a current, each one desperate to seize the day's earnings. Through this boisterous tide of humanity, Roshi led Itachi and Anko with his usual confident stride. The mission scroll's address brought them to the rear courtyard of an inn with a weathered signboard reading Sofeng. There, among stacked bundles of vividly dyed fabric, they found their client, Tanzai. The man was every inch a seasoned merchant, plump frame wrapped in a once fine brown silk gown now dulled by dust, round spectacles perched on a rounder face, eyes sharp and restless as they tracked the movements of his laborious. 6 employees worked with exaggerated care, loading bolts of southern weave cloth into reinforced carts, their reverence for the fabric betraying its worth. When Tanzai's gaze shifted to the new arrivals, his smile faltered. It lingered a moment too long on Anko, her dark purple windbreaker crisp and new, her expression already impatient, before flicking to the boy beside her. Itachi, small for his age, wore a ninjutsu pouch strapped neatly at his side, his face still soft with childhood. A flicker of doubt crossed the merchant's eyes. 2 adults and 1 child. His thoughts raced behind the lenses of his glasses. This girl looks troublesome. And this boy? Is he even 10? My southern weave is worth a fortune, but years of wheeling and dealing had trained Tanzai to bury instinctive reactions. In a heartbeat, his expression thawed into something almost absurdly welcoming. Kono her ninja-samas. At last you've arrived. He bustled forward, his voice booming for all to hear. You must be exhausted from such a long journey, truly, truly. His gaze flicked to their forehead protectors before settling on Roshi. With practiced deference, he asked, "This distinguished gentleman must be the captain, yes? May I have your honored name?" Special Jonin, Roshi. Roshi's eyes, cool and steady, passed over him to rest on the carts brimming with expensive cloth. Tanzai clasped his hands together with a laugh. "Ah, Captain Roshi. Forgive me, forgive me." His genial smile didn't soften the merchant's shrewd undercurrent. His eyes darted back, probing. "And these 2 spirited young ninja-samas are?" "Anko Mitarashi, Uchiha Itachi." Roshi's reply was short, sharp, offering no room for elaboration. The moment the name Uchiha slipped free, a spark lit in Tanzai's gaze. His smile gained an extra shade of warmth, though doubt still churned beneath the surface like dark water under thin ice. Of course, he gushed. "You must all be starving after your travels. There's a stall at the post entrance, ramen with broth so rich it'll wake your very soul. Allow me to treat you." "Very well," Roshi agreed without hesitation. A shinobi needed fuel as much as weapons. Tanzai turned with theatrical briskness, bellowing at his workers as they struggled with the carts. "Faster, faster. I'll return with our distinguished guests, and then we depart." Anko curled her lip at the display. Itachi, however, stayed rooted, his quiet gaze sweeping across the busy employees and stacked goods. "Captain," he murmured to Roshi, "I'll remain and watch over them." Roshi gave a brief nod. With that, he and Anko followed Tanzai out of the courtyard's din. The ramen shop Tanzai promised turned out to be a humble roadside stall, rickety tables packed with merchants and porters, the air thick with pork bone broth and soy sauce. Tanzai ordered 3 bowls with practiced ease. When they arrived, the broth was cloudy, slices of translucent char siu and limp bamboo shoots floating lazily atop the noodles. Roshi dug in first, blowing gently on the noodles before eating with steady appetite. Seeing her captain start, Anko reluctantly followed, though her frown deepened at the greasy broth. Tanzai, by contrast, only toyed with his food, clearly distracted. At last he set down his chopsticks, leaned forward, and spoke with a mixture of worry and complaint that only a merchant could perfect. "Captain Roshi, as you can see, this cargo is no ordinary cloth. Southern weave from the land of fire, worth a king's ransom overseas. To speak frankly, I have wagered my entire fortune, my very life, on this batch." He paused, studying Roshi's expression, then lowered his voice. "For the commission, I've scraped together 100,000 Rio. At first, I thought the route to the land of tea was safe enough. A C-rank journey at most. A few tune-in would have sufficed. But then... His voice softened with just the right note of awe. Hokage-sama himself classified it as B rank. And sent you, a Jonin captain, to lead. Such thoughtfulness, such care for us humble merchants. I scarcely know how to show my gratitude. Roshi swallowed the last of his noodles, lifted the bowl, and took an unhurried sip of broth. His movements were calm, deliberate, nothing wasted. When he set the bowl down, his gaze settled on Tanzai, steady and unblinking. The merchant's words unraveled in his mind like puzzle pieces snapping into place. 100,000 Rio reward. His entire fortune staked on this shipment. Originally expected rank, C rank. A C rank mission usually fell between 30 and 100,000 Rio. B rank ranged from 80,000 to 200,000. Tanzai had offered exactly 100,000, the ceiling of C rank, but the floor of B rank. He had even emphasized that he had scraped it together, signaling both his limit and his original assessment of the risks. Risks, he clearly believed, did not reach true B rank levels. And yet, the Hokage's office had upgraded the commission. Roshi's thoughts sharpened. C rank meant no expectation of hostile ninja, at worst, bandits or wild beasts, handled by a chunin with genin support. B rank, however, explicitly signified a real chance of enemy shinobi, requiring a seasoned chunin squad or even a jonin. But Tanzai's manner, his words, his concerns, none of them reflected fear of ninja. He spoke of gratitude toward the village for raising the mission's rank, as though the Hokage had done him a favor rather than given him a warning. If he truly believed his fortune was in danger from a roguening group like the Black Snake, he would never have stopped at 100,000. A desperate man would have found another 10, even 20,000 to push his case solidly into B-rank territory and secure the strongest escort possible. No, his fear wasn't shinobi. It was something else. Tanzai-san, Roshi's voice cut through the background clamor with the clarity of steel. What was it you truly feared? What made you decide this cargo required 100,000 Rio worth of protection? The merchant froze, clearly not expecting the directness. His lips tightened, then curved into a wry smile. His eyes flickered behind his glasses. Captain Roshi, your insight is very good. To be frank, the road to D-port is usually safe. Few bandits, no real trouble. But the forests are vast, and there are always small-time gangs, 24 here, 30 there, using the terrain to their advantage. For an isolated caravan, they can be a nightmare. With goods as valuable as mine, I feared being overwhelmed and stripped bare. He hesitated, lowering his voice. And near D-port, there's a stretch called Nochipo Forest. Lately, it's been restless. A group called the Chayama Gang has entrenched themselves there. 2, maybe 300 strong. Desperados, cutthroats, dangerous men. Chayama Gang. Roshi echoed quietly. That explained it. For a merchant, a mob of hundreds was more terrifying than a handful of rogue shinobi. Enough to warrant staking everything on a top-tier C-rank escort. And yet, the name Black Snake had never left Tanzai's lips. A rift yawned between the village's intelligence and the client's perception. That was no accident. Either Konoha's intelligence was flawed, the Black Snake operated in deep secrecy, or their targets simply didn't overlap with Tanzai's trade routes. Perhaps there was more still, hidden beneath the surface. Understood. Roshi didn't press further. He only nodded, finished the last of his broth, and set the bowl aside. His eyes flicked to Anko, who was already prodding impatiently at her half-eaten meal. If you're done, head back. We depart soon. Finally. Anko tossed down her chopsticks with relief. Tanzai scrambled to his feet, regaining his practiced smile. Yes. Yes. At once. With you here, Captain Roshi, my heart is truly at ease. When they returned to the Songfongin's courtyard, the carts were already packed, vivid cloth hidden under heavy tarps. Itachi stood guard beside them, his quiet nod confirming all was in order. Depart. Tanzai barked. With a chorus of creaking axles and snorting horses, The caravan rolled out of the inn's gates and merged into the crowded main road of Nansho Post, turning southwest toward the long, uncertain road to Deport in the Land of Tea. Within the Land of Fire, a Konoha forehead protector was the greatest shield one could ask for. Its mere presence guaranteed safety. Because of this, the caravan advanced without hindrance. Only when they crossed the border into the Land of Tea did the porters begin to glance about nervously, their movements tightening as if sensing unseen eyes. Roshi immediately began dispatching shadow clones to scout ahead. Any small bandit group lurking in the forest paths was eliminated by his clones before they even realized they'd been discovered. Sometimes the clones returned with spoils, much to Tanzai's delight. The merchant's smile grew wider with every pouch of pilfered coin or weapon recovered. But as the caravan neared the ancient woodland of Nochipo, that easy cheer was smothered by the shadows pooling beneath the trees. "Captain Roshi, Nochipo lies just ahead," Tanzai urged, his horse edging closer, voice trembling. "That Chayama gang. The slope camp is empty." Roshi's tone was calm, but his gaze never left the emerald rise in the distance. His clones had already scouted it. An entire bandit stronghold, large enough to house hundreds, stood abandoned. No corpses. No signs of battle. Just a clean, deliberate evacuation. Tanzai blanched. "Empty? Then, where have they gone?" "I don't know." Roshi's reply was clipped, his eyes sweeping the thickening tree lines on either side of the road. His vigilance was taut as a bowstring, every sense spread outward like a spiderweb. Hundreds of missing brigands, vanished without a trace, the weight of it pressed over them like a gathering storm. That tension remained until the caravan finally bypassed Nochipo and entered the open stretch leading to Deport. The merchant sagged in his saddle, relief flooding his features. "We're past it. Thank the heavens. Thank you, Captain Roshi." To him, the threat seemed over. But Roshi's gaze lingered on the port city ahead. Grey-white walls leaned against the mountainside, while tall masts speared the sky above the harbor. Yet the closer they came to the towering city gates, the sharper Roshi's unease grew. The silence of Nochipo still gnawed at him. The caravan flowed toward the gates along with traders and townsfolk. Several guards in leather armor blocked the entrance, halberds in hand. Though their posture seemed lazy, their eyes were sharp as hawks, gleaming with scrutiny and something darker, greed. When Tanzai's turn came, the scarred guard captain sauntered forward, eyes flicking over the travel papers and torped carts. A thin, false smile curled on his lips. "Cloth merchant, Tanzai." His tone dragged mockingly. "By order of the city's new regulations, all incoming goods are subject to a special transit tax, 40% of their value." F40. Tanzai went pale, his voice cracking. "Impossible. There's never been such a law." "Sir, surely you're mistaken." His cry was like a signal flare. From the shadows around the gate, dozens of armed men poured out, circling the caravan with predatory precision. Anko's hand twitched beneath her purple coat, rage burning in her eyes. This wasn't law, this was robbery. But she didn't move. At the rear, Itachi's gaze turned cold, dissecting every detail. The attackers' weapon calluses, the faint tattoos hidden under their armor, and the feral gleam in their eyes. These were not disciplined guards. Tanzai's shirt clung to his back with cold sweat. Instinct screamed at him, "Don't provoke them." Bowing repeatedly, he forced a sickly smile. "Sirs, please, forgive me. It was my foolish tongue. I cannot pay 40%. Allow me to sell inside the city first, then I'll return with your tax. Surely an exception can be made." Ninjas had no mandate to confront another nation's government. Not openly. Ever since the second Hokage, Senju Tobarama, created the Anbu, missions involving political entanglement or humiliation were quietly filtered. Official postings were always the same: escort, protection, subjugation. Anything messier never touched the public mission boards. An exception. The guard captain sneered, his eyes gleaming as they swept over the carts. "No coin? Then leave 2 wagons as tax. Do it." "Yes." The guards roared, rushing forward like wolves tearing into prey. "Stop." The word wasn't loud, but it sliced cleanly through the chaos, chilling the air. Roshi stood before the two targeted carts, his figure blocking the path as if he had always been there. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't even lift his hands. He simply stood, calm, immovable, his shadow cast long and heavy across the ground. For the rushing men, it was like colliding headfirst with a stone cliff. The two men who had rushed forward froze at the silent obstruction, their momentum breaking like waves against stone. The scar-faced captain's triangular eyes narrowed to slits. His gaze raked over Roshi, lingering on the unmistakable leaf crest etched into the forehead protector. The corner of his mouth twitched. Swallowing his anger at being challenged, he forced his voice into a pompous, authoritative bark. "A ninja from Konoha? Look carefully. I am this city's guard captain. Collecting taxes according to regulation is our duty. What's this? Are Konoha ninja planning to interfere with the Land of T's internal affairs, attack officials lawfully performing their duties?" Roshi's tone was steady, but his gaze struck like an ice pick, drilling into the captain's eyes. "We accepted a mission. Our contract is to escort this caravan and its goods safely to D port." His voice hardened, each word carrying weight. "What you're doing is openly robbing the property of Konohagakure's client." The last word landed like a hammer. An invisible pressure erupted from Roshi, a suffocating, murderous aura, as if it had clawed its way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. The air itself seemed to wither, drained of warmth. Several guards closest to the cart staggered back, their faces drained of blood, hands trembling so badly their weapons nearly clattered to the ground. The scar-faced captain's bluster shriveled instantly. His throat bobbed in a hard swallow, a cold sweat breaking across his brow. This calm, expressionless young ninja radiated a danger far greater than any beast lurking in the wilds. He didn't doubt, if he gave the order to attack, the man before him would drown them all in blood without hesitation. Anko shifted her stance subtly, feet sliding into place to intercept any flanking attempt. At the rear, Itachi's eyes were like twin obsidian blades, tracking the positions of the guards stationed farther back. Silence choked the gate. The only sounds were the nervous snorts of pack horses and Tanzai's ragged breathing. Among the gathering crowd, several onlookers exchanged uneasy glances. One slipped away. The captain's eyes darted frantically. Seconds stretched into eternities. His facade cracked, and the false authority he clung to crumbled. Finally, he forced a smile so stiff it barely resembled one, his voice brittle and dry. "Hair. A misunderstanding. Just a misunderstanding. Everyone, fall back. Don't disturb our honored guests." The ring of men scattered instantly, like prisoners granted reprieve from execution. Tanzai nearly burst forward with relief, eager to push through the gate, but Roshi's calm voice stopped him in his tracks. "Pay them. By the old rules, whatever the amount is." The suffocating aura had vanished, leaving Roshi's tone as composed as before. Tanzai blinked, then fumbled as though waking from a nightmare. With shaking hands, he pulled several banknotes from his pouch and offered them with both hands. The captain snatched them, shoving them into his pocket without even a glance. His smile returned, wide and sycophantic. "Let them through. Quickly now, let them through." The merchant nearly fell to his knees with gratitude, thanking Roshi in a trembling voice as he herded his men toward the docks. But Roshi did not head for the port immediately. Instead, he led Anko and Itachi into a damp, narrow back alley, the smell of saltwater heavy in the air. "Captain, just now." Anko's satisfaction at putting the guards in their place was tempered by a deep frown. Her voice dropped low. "Will the village think we overstepped? Could they hold you accountable?" Roshi leaned casually against the wall, the light at the mouth of the alley splitting his face into shadow and glow. He didn't answer her right away. Instead, his eyes turned to the boy who had been quietly watching everything. "Itachi, what did you see?" The Uchiha lifted his gaze, calm as ever. Many of those guards had tattoos, partially hidden. The kind common among the Chayama mountain bandits. They didn't seem like regular soldiers at all. Anko froze, then the pieces clicked. Her memory flashed back to the telltale marks and expressions. Understanding struck like lightning. Roshi smiled faintly. Exactly. Newly reformed bandits. Always running from shinobi hunts, but never shedding their old instincts. They've yet to learn what it means to play at being guards. The caravan finally came to a halt before the designated dockside warehouse. The sea breeze, thick with salt, rushed over them. The air was alive with the port's chaos. Sailors bawling out shanties, horns of incoming ships bellowing, the screech of ropes and pulleys as cargo was hoisted. Porters got straight to unloading, while Tanzai bustled about with forced cheer, his smile the brittle kind one wears after narrowly avoiding disaster. Roshi found a quiet stone step near the warehouse, where he could keep the docks and the main road in view, and sat down. Anko stood nearby, arms folded, the hood of her dark purple trench coat draped carelessly over her head. Her sharp eyes never stopped scanning the crowd. Itachi settled silently at Roshi's other side, expression unreadable. The land of T's governance over its territories is loose, Roshi explained, his voice calm, his gaze still sweeping. As long as taxes are collected, and no major incidents break out, they hardly care who's really in charge. That's how those bandits managed to turn themselves into officials. Likely, they were granted authority directly from the daimyo. Still, for a band of mere highway brigands, even 200 or 300 strong, to be officially sanctioned? Unlikely, unless there were deeper reasons. In this world, raw numbers meant little. Soldiers, no matter how many, could not withstand a ninja's ninjutsu. Even a genin, with some patience, could infiltrate using transformation jutsu and scatter such a group from within. Piecing together Konoha's intelligence with Tanzai's very different account, Roshi was already forming conclusions. By now, Tanzai had wrapped up the first round of business. He hurried back over, wiping sweat from his forehead, wearing a smile equal parts gratitude and unease. Captain Roshi. Esteemed sirs. You've worked so hard. Truly, truly hard. The Heifi pavilion in here on the docks is clean and well kept. I've already booked rooms for you. Please, I beg you, stay a few days so I can properly express my gratitude. Of course, all expenses will be on me. That was the excuse. In truth, cargo handovers would take several days, and Team 5 had technically completed their mission the moment they reached D-Port. After helping resolve the Entra-tax extortion, they could have walked away. But Tanzai knew better. If the guards discovered his escort had left, trouble would soon follow. Keeping Roshi and his team close was his only safety net. It was his own mistake for not considering risks beyond simply reaching the city when he posted the mission. All right, Roshi said after a brief pause of thought. Tanzai nearly bowed to the ground with relief, thanking him profusely before personally escorting them to the inn. The Heifi pavilion stood on a quieter street at the fringe of the docks, a 3-story wooden inn whose simple exterior was well kept. The innkeeper, a reserved middle-aged man, betrayed a flicker of reverence when he saw the 3 Konoha headbands. He quickly arranged the best rooms on the top floor. Roshi's room was at the far end. From its window, he could see the sprawl of the harbor and the endless blue sea. Anko and Itachi retreated to their rooms to rest, while Roshi lingered by the window, watching the bustle below. The streets were noisy, disorganized, and crawling with the so-called guards, Chayama gang thugs now dressed in armor. They roamed in packs of 3 or 5, tossing unfriendly looks toward the Heifi pavilion, but none dared draw too close. Before long, Anko returned, her trench coat swapped for a dark combat outfit, her hair tied back in a loose knot. She looked impatient, almost eager. Captain, there are some shady types watching us from downstairs. Want me to clear them out? Now that their true nature was exposed, Anko had no qualms about using her fists. Itachi stepped in as well, having finished unpacking. That was when a stir rose from the lobby below, followed by the innkeeper's strained voice. "W.A. Wasabi-sama? Why have you personally?" A measured, steady voice cut in, gentle yet carrying undeniable weight. "It's fine. I heard that Konoha's esteemed guests are here. Jiroko has come to pay his respects. Please announce me." Wasabi. Roshi recalled that D-Port was dominated by 2 major families, the Wasabi and the Hejis. For years, they alternated authority over the city. If the Chayama gang had forced their way in, then at least one of these houses had been displaced. "Anko," Roshi said, his tone even. "Let Wasabi-san up." "Yes, Captain Tilda," she replied, sing-song but alert. Moments later, heavy yet steady footsteps sounded on the wooden stairs. A middle-aged man in a dark grey silk kimono entered with Anko. He carried himself with unhurried dignity, his build tall and sturdy, the walk of someone trained in taijutsu. His neatly combed hair, lean face, and composed demeanor framed eyes that were kind on the surface yet sharp with worldly wisdom. Wasabi Jiroko, head of the Wasabi family, had come in person. His gaze swept across the room, pausing first on Anko's impatient frown, then on Itachi's calm, unreadable expression, before finally settling on Roshi by the window. Though Roshi and Anko seemed to be of similar age, their presence couldn't be more different. The same man who had acted with such force at the city gates now stood reserved and composed. Jiroko quickly concluded, such decisiveness was no act of impulse. "I must apologize for this unannounced visit," Jiroko said with a practiced humility, bowing slightly. "I am Wasabi Jiroko. May I have the honor of your name, distinguished guest?" "Roshi," came the calm reply. Roshi pulled out a chair, his voice steady as stone. "Wasabi-san is being too polite. Please, have a seat." Jiroko nodded his thanks and sat down. His tone sharpened. "Roshi-kun, your actions at the city gate were rather reckless." TCH. Anko shifted against the doorframe, arms crossed, her scoff as cutting as a kunai. Roshi's expression didn't so much as twitch. He tapped a finger against the wooden tabletop. Thud, thud, a soft rhythm that underscored his even tone. "Oh? And why do you say that?" Jiroko's smile lingered, though his eyes carried weight. "Hokage-sama himself left me with words meant for Roshi-kun, should you arrive in D-Port." The statement drew a subtle reaction. Itachi, silent until now, finally turned, his dark eyes narrowing with quiet thought. Roshi remained still, his calm unbroken. His voice came like still water, neither hurried nor hesitant. "I'm listening." Jiroko folded his hands. The Wasabi family and the Heijis family have long contested the right to govern D-Port. Until recently, we were evenly matched. But half a month ago, the Heijis family allied themselves with the Chayama bandits lurking outside the city. With their numbers, they seized control of the town. He leaned forward, his composure cracking with indignation. Had it ended there, for the sake of stability, we might have endured it. But to secure their loyalty, the Heijis family has given those wolves free rein. They extort merchants, levy absurd taxes, and exploit the people without restraint. If this continues, D-Port will rot from the inside out. His gaze hardened. That is why I turned to Hokage-sama for aid. "Anko, Itachi, from here on, you two will be in charge of guarding Tanzai-san's warehouse." The two gave a crisp acknowledgement. Roshi then turned his calm gaze toward Jiroko. "I understand your concern. If what you've told me is accurate, then your situation, Wasabi-san, may not remain safe for long." Indeed, for Jiroko to openly seek out Konoha Shinobi was a move that would not go unnoticed, and likely be seen as a threat. Roshi had half expected Jiroko to invite him back to his residence immediately. Instead, after a brief hesitation, Jiroko bowed slightly. "My affairs are stable for now, but there are matters I must arrange. If you don't mind, Roshi-kun, please wait here. Once I've settled things, I will personally return to offer a proper apology." "Then I won't keep you, Wasabi-san. Go on." With another polite apology, Jiroko withdrew. Roshi watched him depart with a handful of guards, his expression faintly thoughtful. "That guy," Anko muttered, arms folded. "He's the one asking for help, yet when you offer protection, Roshi, he backs away." She'd clearly caught on to Roshi's intent, but Jiroko's refusal made it obvious he was holding something back. "Perhaps he already has protectors in the shadows," Roshi replied evenly. "If so, he'll need to make arrangements before showing his hand." Anko let out a weary sigh. This mission is a mess. As expected of a special jonin. Though, your mind's sharp, Roshi. You don't let it get under your skin. With that, she dropped onto the bed, sprawled like someone finally letting her exhaustion show. Itachi's eyes shifted sideways, catching every word without comment. Anko grumbled on, "Still, Since Hokage-sama already accepted the Wasabi family's request, why keep everything so vague? If we'd known the real situation from the start, we could have dealt with those thugs at the gate. Finally, Itachi broke his silence. His tone was quiet but firm. As shinobi, we cannot openly move against official figures, Anko-senpai. HMPH, so they say. But then why bother with a merchant's commission at all? By now, that part of the mission should be considered finished, right? If we can't handle this in the open, why not deal with it at night? They're just ordinary people anyway. Itachi's gaze flickered. The village gave us more than one objective. Either those bandits are tied to rogue shinobi, or there are shinobi among them. He recalled his first mission with Roshi, when a supposed bandit gang of a dozen turned out to be led by a rogue ninja. That's why Captain didn't act rashly. But, water. Roshi interrupted, pouring himself a glass. Anko perked up. I'll take some too. She slid into the chair opposite him. Roshi passed her a cup and spoke, his tone as measured as ever. As Itachi said, for the Chayama gang to be accepted into local power, there must be someone backing them. As for Hokage-sama not spelling it out, his eyes narrowed slightly. It's not unprecedented. He thought back to the Wave Country mission. Tazuna couldn't afford to commission shinobi for a direct fight against rogue ninja, so he cleverly issued a C-rank escort request. Yet the reality was far beyond what he'd paid for. For a civilian, the deception was one thing. But as shinobi, especially at Jonin level, you quickly learned how much the village itself chose to overlook. Konoha's review process wasn't so simple that a client could lie and get away with it. The Hidden Mist's demon brothers, then Zabuza himself. Kakashi must have seen through the inconsistencies. And yet, he continued the mission. Perhaps because villages did take care of lower-level rogues when convenient. But against a former mist swordsman of Zabuza's level, especially while leading 3 genin, it was a gamble with layers of intention behind it. The most likely scenario was that Konoha, still reeling from the shock of the Uchiha clan massacre, had been searching for new mission sources and, at the same time, testing the waters in the Wave Country. Feigning ignorance of Tazuna's true intentions fit the village's strategy perfectly. In truth, during the Wave Country incident, both Tazuna and Konoha had been seeking each other out. That was the most reasonable explanation. This escort mission, however, was a different matter entirely. Tanzai had simply posted what he believed to be a top-tier C-rank commission. Konoha, spotting the opportunity, and finding the payment acceptable, reclassified it as Brank, dispatching Team 5 to handle D-Port's situation. The Black Snake Group's involvement was still uncertain, so the 2 additional tasks were listed as optional. Only the B-rank escort portion was mandatory. As for why the details hadn't been laid out explicitly, perhaps the one being tested is me. Roshi had already formed a rough idea. His current approach was a far cry from the old Roshi. From the very first mission he had chosen after recovering, to his detached attitude toward this second assignment, nothing resembled the boy who once sought to prove that the Senju's glory still burned brightly. Even in his past life, when a model employee suddenly stopped striving, their boss would inevitably come down in person, concerned something had gone wrong. So this was that kind of mission. A mission with little real difficulty, where the degree of success depended entirely on Roshi's own initiative. He could simply finish the bare minimum escort work. The village would not blame him for ignoring Wasabi Jiroko, since Jiroko had no official token proving Konoha's acceptance of his plea. On paper, this B rank would look like nothing more than a reward for a war hero, an insignificant line on his record. Afterwards, the village would likely conclude that Roshi, nearly killed in the war, had lost his edge, and his career path would be adjusted accordingly. That was probably the outcome most aligned with Grandmama Mocha's expectations. And truthfully, it suited Roshi's own self-image as well. Just an ordinary, unlucky yet fortunate man, with no particular brilliance or talent. But reality didn't permit such complacency. The Uchiha clan's downfall, for instance, was not only a wound to the village's strength, it threatened the stability of the environment Roshi lived in. To shield himself from the ripples of such events, he could not afford to remain too low in the village's hierarchy. Ninja villages interfering in another country's affairs is never something they'll admit openly, Roshi explained to Anko. That's why they sent a Jonin team instead of a lower rank. We're given discretion to act as the situation demands. Heh, then I'll just leave it all to Special Jonin-sama, Anko chuckled, stretching. A simple kunoichi like me is only good for following orders. Her lazy, almost mocking tone earned her a sidelong glance from Roshi. If only it were really that simple, for him to just lift a finger and be done with it. Meanwhile, as Jiroko concluded his visit, the current captain of D Port's guards reported the city gate incident to a tall man. He wore a brown kimono beneath a white hari, a samurai blade resting at his side. Jubei-sama, how should we deal with those ninja? About the city gate tax. Jubei's eyes narrowed, sharp and sinister. Watch them. Do not provoke Konoha Shinobi. Forget the city gate tax for now, we'll revisit it after they're gone. His gaze darkened. Control your men. Understand. The captain paled, dropping to one knee at once. Why yes, sir. At the same time, in the Wasabi household, Jiroko was in quiet discussion with another figure. Oh, Special Jonin Roshi, was it? It makes no difference, the other replied. If he's curious, let him come. Then I'll extend another invitation. My earlier refusal must have raised doubts in him, perhaps even suspicion about my trustworthiness, Jiroko said with a polite smile, rising to his feet. The figure chuckled. No matter. Once he meets me, he'll understand. Of course, Jiroko replied smoothly. With his plan set, Roshi first spoke with Tanzai. The merchant, visibly anxious, tried to dissuade him again and again, but Roshi's steady, unwavering gaze left no room for negotiation. With 2 Konoha shinobi remaining behind to guard the warehouse, Tanzai finally relented, though unwillingly. Not long after, Wasabi Jiroko returned, this time personally inviting Roshi to the Wasabi estate. The Wasabi family referred not only to the household itself but also to the clan-like organization it led. The estate wasn't extravagant, but it housed dozens of the family's core members and their kin. Its perimeter was fortified with guards armed with bows and even firearms, an unusual sight for shinobi-trained eyes. Watchtowers rose before the rear courtyard, manned at every hour. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. Jiroko commanded genuine respect from his kin, and that same courtesy extended to Roshi as he was led deeper in. They passed through an ornate sliding door decorated with pine and crane motifs. Beyond it lay a serene garden, raked white sand, stepping stones, and carefully trimmed greenery. Corridors ringed the space, connecting tea rooms and private residences. Roshi slowed slightly, taking in the refined atmosphere. This feels like the inner residence. Indeed, Jiroko replied, continuing without pause. There is someone here Roshidono should meet. The words triggered Roshi's inner alarm, and he read it himself. Before a secluded courtyard screened by slender bamboo, Jiroko halted. Bowing low, he announced, Konoha's Special Jonin, Roshi, has arrived. The door slid open with a soft rasp. A young girl peeked out, dark blue casual wear, neat black hair cut short, and a delicate face with calm, intelligent eyes. She couldn't have been more than 17 or 18. The moment her gaze fell on Roshi, surprise flickered there, quickly buried beneath polite composure. Shizune. Recognition clicked immediately. And if Shizune was here, then the one inside could only be, his guard eased. Please, come in. Shizune stepped aside, her voice steady, gentle. Jiroko did not enter. After a final bow, he withdrew to wait quietly under the veranda. Roshi followed Shizune into the courtyard. The first thing he saw was the figure by the stone table. Sunlight filtered through bamboo leaves, scattering dappled shadows across the garden. A woman sat lazily on a stool, clad in a loose green robe. Her golden hair, untied, spilled down her shoulders like molten light. Several sake bottles sat before her, some drained, some half-filled. She raised a heavy ceramic cup, tilting it back with a practiced ease, swallowing greedily. Her profile in the shifting light was breathtaking. Smooth, youthful skin, sharp brows, the kind of beauty that seemed untouched by age, no older than her early 20s. Tsunade. As expected. H.M. Tsunade set the cup down, wiping stray liquor from her lips with the back of her hand. Slowly, her head turned. Her amber eyes, dulled with alcohol, wandered toward Roshi, hazy but penetrating all the same. "Lady Tsunade, you've had too much," Shizune chided softly. "Roshikuin is here." "Oh," Tsunade dragged the word out, her voice rough, thick with drink. "So that brat's finally here." Her gaze sharpened just slightly. "Old Momoka isn't dead yet, is she?" Roshi's face tightened despite himself. Of all things, he couldn't take lightly the one elder who had given him genuine care and warmth. "Grandma is still full of vigor. Honestly, she may be healthier than you right now." Good." Tsunade accepted the jab without flinching, as if his words slid right past her. Or perhaps, in her haze, she simply didn't care. She pushed against the stone table and rose unsteadily, the faint tremor in her body betraying just how much she'd had to drink. Her steps carried her closer, unhurried but heavy, until the scent of sake lingered thick in the air between them. She leaned slightly forward, eyes narrowing as if to pierce through him. Her amber gaze, though blurred, still held the scrutiny of someone weighing far more than appearances. "I heard you were dying once. Grandma Momoka even sent me a letter, begging me to save you." Tsunade burped softly, her amber eyes half-lidded. "But looking at you now, lively, standing tall, seems you're doing just fine." She lazily extended a finger toward Roshi's chest, but stopped midway, pulling it back with a slurred murmur. "Since you're alive, why not just stay in the village? She's already 78. She shouldn't have to keep worrying about you." The heady mix of alcohol and faint perfume hung thick in the air. Roshi frowned and instinctively shifted a step back. "The village has assigned me a mission," he replied, steady but curt. "I intend to see it through." "Village, village." Tsunade repeated the word like a bitter chant, her lips curling as if she could taste the syllables. Even Grandpa, one after another. And in the end, what did it change? Before Roshi could respond, she suddenly closed the distance with startling speed, far too sharp for a drunken stumble. A slender, deceptively delicate hand slammed onto his shoulder, crushing down with monstrous force. "Ua!" Roshi gritted his teeth as an overwhelming weight crashed onto him. The blue stone beneath his feet groaned in protest before cracking apart, jagged lines spiderwebbing outward. The haze in Tsunade's eyes vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, piercing clarity that cut like a blade. Her gaze locked onto his. "You. Grandma Momoka used that on you, didn't she?" The pressure was suffocating. Roshi's only option was to flare his chakra. In an instant, a condensed blaze of blue surged from his pores, rippling with raw vitality. Boom! The stone beneath him exploded, shards flying as a violent shockwave swept the courtyard, scattering white sand and whipping bamboo leaves into a frenzy. Roshi forced his spine straight against her crushing strength, the pit beneath him sinking deeper with every heartbeat. HMPH. Tsunade sneered, a flash of complicated emotion crossing her face. Then, just as abruptly, she released him. The weight vanished like mist. Her posture softened, arms crossing as she leaned back casually against the stone table. As though nothing had happened, she lifted her sake cup again, swirling the liquid. "So tell me," she asked coolly, her gaze still sharp despite her languid air. "What kind of mission could be important enough for the old man to send you?" Roshi brushed his shoulder where no dust lingered, his voice calm as if the ground hadn't nearly swallowed him whole. "You misunderstand. Grandma Momoka's attempt was never announced. It was an accident. At most, the third Hokage has his suspicions, nothing more." He paused, then added evenly, "As for the mission, Jiroko-san has already explained." Tsunade's amber eyes narrowed, her lashes casting thin shadows across her cheeks. The courtyard fell into silence, broken only by the restless rustle of bamboo. Off to the side, Shizune stood tensely, her brow knit, her gaze flicking between master and shinobi with faint worry. Finishing the last of her cup, Tsunade let it fall onto the table with a muted clink. She didn't look at Roshi this time. Instead, she waved her hand dismissively, reaching for another bottle. "Go, then." Do whatever you came here for, she muttered, her voice already thickening with drink again. Roshi bowed slightly. Yes, Lady Tsunade. He turned and followed Shizune toward the gate. Just before stepping out, he stopped. Without looking back, his voice carried clearly across the courtyard. Grandma misses you. If you have time, it would be good to return to the village and see her. Lady Tsunade, you are too rude. Shizune finally burst out after Roshi left. To speak like that, and even strike him. TCH. That brat wasn't exactly polite either, was he? The Senju princess waved her hand dismissively. Besides, he didn't seem to care, so stop fussing. Return to the village. What would that accomplish? Tsunade's gaze drifted toward the courtyard, where green bamboo swayed gently in the wind. All that waited there were heavy stares, silent, burning expectations. And she was someone who couldn't even face blood. What use was she now? She couldn't shoulder anything, couldn't endure anything. That was why she wanted to see Roshi. To confirm with her own eyes whether that boy truly carried that power. The brief clash in the courtyard caused no ripples outside. When Roshi stepped out, Jiroko was already waiting by the corridor, standing respectfully with a perfectly measured humility, as though the muffled crack of shattered stone just moments ago had been nothing more than the wind knocking loose a tile. He led Roshi through winding halls to an elegantly furnished reception room at the front of the estate. Regarding the Chayama gang, Roshi began as soon as they sat, his tone direct, deliberately sidestepping the matter of Tsunade. Do you have more precise intelligence? Jiroko straightened, his expression grave. Nochipo has always been a den of ronin and fugitives. In the past, their numbers were small. Both my family and the Hedgies would send men regularly to clear them out, barely keeping the trade routes safe. He paused, brows furrowing. But about 4 months ago, everything changed. A wandering samurai appeared. With sheer force and ruthless methods, he united the scattered bands in Nochipo, forged them into a single force, and even built a stronghold on the hillside. At that time, both our houses realized the matter was far beyond our ability to handle. We petitioned Konoha for a mission, but no response ever came. A hint of bitterness entered his voice. In the meantime, we could only strengthen patrols along the trade roads, doing our best to hold on. His tone dropped lower. The turning point came half a month ago. The Hedgies family suddenly declared that they had completely eradicated the Nochipo bandits. At the same time, they announced they had recruited a new unit of elite guards to guarantee the safety of D-Port. Almost immediately afterward, an envoy from the daimyo's palace arrived. My family was reprimanded for ineffective governance, allowing bandits to flourish, while the Hedgies were praised for eliminating evil and restoring peace, a great service to the region. The daimyo then transferred management of the port to the Hedgies for the next 4 years. After securing the daimyo's favor, the Hedgies appointed a man named Jubei as the city's defense chief. Jiroko's expression hardened. And you understand, Roshi-kun, those so-called new guards are none other than the former Chayama gang, and Jubei is the wandering samurai who forged them into one. Roshi listened in silence, his fingertips rhythmically tapping the polished edge of the low table. The situation was far messier than he'd expected. How strong is this Jubei? He finally asked. Jiroko's face grew grim, his words measured. He is a dangerous, ruthless man. As for his true ability, forgive me, we found only scattered rumors. They say that during the suppression, he displayed strength and speed far beyond an ordinary warrior. Some even whisper he wields techniques akin to ninjutsu. Jiroko bowed his head slightly, his tone apologetic. But we have no concrete proof. Roshi pondered briefly before shifting the topic. Then, what about the Black Snake Group? Have you ever heard that name? A flicker of hesitation crossed Jiroko's face, as though weighing whether to speak. After several seconds, he finally began, Indeed, I've heard of them. About 2 months ago, the sea route from D-Port to Naki Island was plagued by vicious pirates, causing severe losses. The daimyo's palace was furious. Not long after, word spread that a band of wandering ninja, the Black Snake Group, accepted a commission from the daimyo himself and wiped the pirates out. He paused, watching Roshi's expression before continuing. But after that incident, the Black Snake group seemed to vanish completely. No further sightings in D Port or its surrounding waters. Perhaps they simply collected their reward and left. The daimyo again. I understand. Roshi gave a small nod. Your information is valuable. Thank you, Wasabi-san. I'm glad I could be of use. Jiroko bowed slightly, then cautiously asked, May I know what Roshi-kun intends to do next? If the Wasabi family can assist in any way, please give the word. If possible, continue to gather intel on the Chayama gang. Roshi rose to his feet. I'll return to the inn to make arrangements. He had initially come concerned for Jiroko's safety. But with Tsunade, one of the Sannin, residing here, and Shizune near Jonin level, even if Tsunade chose not to act, Jiroko was in no real danger from assassins. If anything urgent arises, send word to me at Heifi Pavilion. Understood, Jiroko said respectfully, personally escorting Roshi from the reception room. At the pier, Anko leaned casually against a wall, the hem of her new purple trench coat lifted slightly by the sea breeze. A blade of grass hung loosely from her mouth as her sharp eyes swept over the busy port. Porters shouting as they hauled crates, guards in worn leather armor patrolling with lazy steps, their gazes lingering too long on piles of valuables. A caravan of fully loaded wagons clattered toward the docks, guarded by several men. The owner spoke in hushed tones with a port official, who quickly waved Laboris over to prioritize this shipment. Beside them, Tanzai muttered indignantly, his face twisted with frustration. Anko's ears caught a few of his words. Damn it, straight onto the ship as soon as they arrive. My goods left behind again. If only I'd bought weapons too. Weapons? Anko's expression sharpened. She pushed off the wall and walked over. Tanzai-san, who are those people? They're weapon merchants, Hongshan spat bitterly. I don't know why, but someone's buying up weapons in bulk. Their shipments get priority, while my cloth has to wait days before loading. Anko-sama, I must rely on you. He continued, pleading for her protection. Now that Roshi had gone, the merchant's sense of security rested entirely on Anko and Itachi. The boy was still too young, so Tanzai clung to Anko like a lifeline. But Anko only gave a distracted reply. Her hand slipped behind her back, fingers flicking lightly. From the shadowed sleeve of her trench coat, a thin grey serpent, no thicker than a finger, slid out soundlessly. It hugged the ground, darting swiftly into the shadows between crates and wagons, vanishing without a trace. After leaving the Wasabi family estate, Roshi sensed someone tailing him from the shadows. He didn't bother shaking them off. Instead, he strolled through the city, pausing at shops, casually chatting with vendors about market prices, then settling down at a street-side tea house. A pot of coarse local tea and a few sticky rice cakes soon arrived. The tea was bitter, the cakes chewy, ordinary fare, but the idle chatter drifting through the tea house confirmed Jiroko's warning. The Chayama gang's disguised guards had built up a month's worth of simmering resentment, like smoldering charcoal waiting for a single spark. By the time Roshi returned to Heifi Pavilion, night had already fallen. Tanzai looked surprised to see him back so soon. After a short exchange, Tanzai retired to his room, leaving Roshi alone. Moments later, a knock sounded. At the door stood Anko, tapping her forehead with 2 fingers in a playful salute. You're back early, Captain? Don't tell me the Wasabi family bored you. Roshi glanced up at Anko. She smirked. Well, I dug up something interesting. Roshi smiled faintly. Then I'll trouble Lady Anko to enlighten us. When you visited the Wasabi estate, a shipment came into the docks. I checked it out. Ninja tools. Kunai, shuriken, protective gear. Do you know where they were sent? Roshi's tone sharpened. I already dispatched Itachi. I'd have gone myself, but I stand out too much. Her smile turned dry. Pretty faces don't blend in at the docks. It was then that Itachi entered, bowing politely. Captain, Anko-senpai. I confirmed everything. The entire shipment went to Naki Island. From what I gathered, they've been quietly stockpiling ninja tools all month. Roshi nodded, then asked, and Tanzai-san's goods? They're safe. I watched the docks all afternoon. The guards kept sneaking glances our way, but they weren't interested in the cloth merchant's cargo. I see. Roshi then recounted the information Jiroko had given him, carefully omitting Tsunade's involvement, mentioning only that Jiroko had hired a powerful ally and there was little need to worry about security. When he finished, the three fell into thoughtful silence. Anko broke it first, frowning. The Chayama gang's desperate for money, the Black Snake group pops in and out of nowhere, and Naki Island secretly buying weapons. These things, they're like beads scattered on the ground. I just can't see the thread tying them together. The Black Snake group connects to Jubei, Itachi offered. At that moment, Tanzai returned upstairs, announcing dinner. Roshi glanced at Anko. She raised her hands dramatically. Yeah, I get it. Come on, kid, she said, clapping Itachi's shoulder. Let's help that poor cloth merchant carry dishes before he bursts into tears and ruins dinner for all of us. Without a word, Itachi followed her out. The door clicked shut, sealing off the noise of the hall. Alone now, Roshi rose and pushed open the window. A cool breeze stirred his hair as he gazed into the night. Kunai and shuriken were called ninja tools for a reason. Ordinary people didn't use them. Even for shinobi, in close combat a sword was more decisive. Anbu standard gear proved that much. For an ordinary group, especially one outside the village system, to buy weapons like these in bulk was anything but normal. And the Chayama gang, openly clawing after money ever since their takeover, looked less like greedy thugs and more like a force funding something larger. Their hunger wasn't just bandit nature. Their eyes were fixed on shinobi. Just then, the door creaked open, and a hotel attendant entered with a tray. Dinner was typical port fare, a steaming bowl of thick fish stew, creamy broth topped with floating scallions, a plate of small sea fish fried until golden and crisp, and the house specialty, fish paste cakes, springy and white, flecked with red pepper for a kick. For the shinobi, Tanzai even brought out a plate of seasonal fruit. Everything all right? Roshi asked casually as he sat down. No issues. Anko deftly set out the bowls and chopsticks, while Itachi quietly placed the fruit platter in the center. Roshi's gaze swept over the fragrant dishes. Once the mission is wrapped up, we'll find another chance to try the local specialties. Then you're paying, Captain. Anko's eyes lit up, her tone shameless. The chef's skills were commendable, the fish fresh, the seasoning simple but precise. By the time Roshi finished, he found himself oddly charmed by D-Port. He decided that once their mission was complete, he would linger a few days to soak in the sights and flavors, assuming, of course, the current mess could be untangled without disaster. When the dishes were cleared, silence settled over the room. Roshi broke it, his voice carrying clearly. I've been thinking. The Black Snake Group's true aim may be to establish a ninja village here in the land of tea, with the Chayama gang propping them up. A ninja village. Anko nearly spat out her drink, eyes wide. With just a bunch of strays? What a joke. Even Itachi's expression shifted, surprise flickering in his usually calm features. It isn't impossible. Roshi's tone was steady, matter of fact. The 5 great nations aren't the only ones with ninja villages. Many smaller countries have their own. As long as they don't infringe on the great power's core interests, no one has the will, or even the resources, to wipe them all out. When war breaks out, the major villages are too busy with their own fronts, leaving gaps in influence. The nobles of smaller nations still have needs and still face threats. Without their own standing force, their safety becomes fragile. That's why founding a ninja village under their direct influence is a logical choice. But, what about Guardian Ninja? Anko protested. Can't a daimyo just hire powerful shinobi to serve as personal guards? Isn't that enough? The principle is different. Roshi shook his head. Guardian Ninja are private soldiers, bound by individual loyalty. They can be swayed, corrupted, or turned against their masters. A ninja village, his voice sharpened on the word, is institutional. It holds legal recognition, sustained funding, and clearly defined boundaries. That stability is what makes it valuable. He paused, letting his words sink in. And frankly, Only this explanation fits why the Land of Tea tolerates the Chayama gang's behavior here in D-Port. Anko opened her mouth, ready to retort, but no counter-argument came. With a frustrated sigh, she ran a hand through her hair. "So what's the play, Roshi?" she finally asked. "First, get this unlucky merchant's goods on the ship, then rush back to the village and dump the headache on the Hokage's desk." Roshi didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his robe and withdrew a scroll, placing it on the table. The black A-rank mission scroll, marked with Hiruzen's personal seal, gleamed coldly in the lamplight. "The village," Roshi tapped the scroll with one finger, his gaze meeting both Anko's and Itachi's, "has already given us the authority. And it has a preference." The words were unspoken but clear: expel, or annihilate, the Black Snake Group. From the Land of Tea's perspective, having its own ninja village was appealing. If resources were going to be invested, why not invest in power rooted in their soil, serving their interests first? But Konoha's view was very different. In the early days, the smaller villages formed alongside the 5 great ones had been ignored, either because they were distant or because Konoha lacked the manpower to care. The Land of Fire's wealth had always provided sufficient missions to sustain the village. Now, though, things had changed. Konoha had thousands of registered shinobi, with numbers still growing even in peacetime. The Land of Tea, a stable and lucrative source of missions, would never be ceded, unless there was no other choice. A cool night breeze drifted through the open window, curling the edges of the mission scroll. Under the lamplight, 3 shadows stretched long across the wall, silent and unmoving. Jubei was a wanderer. He'd never had a fixed abode before, and even now, despite holding the title of Chief Guard of D-Port, he still shifted his residence daily. Not even his own men from the Chayama gang could find him unless he chose to appear. Just a little longer. The final stretch. The Konoha shinobi would be leaving soon. They were only here for an escort mission. And yet, unease gnawed at him. The Wasabi family had reached out to those Konoha ninja, and one of them had even paid a return visit. A bad sign. But this wasn't the right moment to act. Jubei felt a stab of regret. Heiji Zuma had long wanted him to eliminate Wasabi Jiroko, but back then Jiroko had been far too obedient. Dissatisfied though he might have been, he'd stayed quiet and caused no trouble. Now, striking at the Konoha shinobi was too risky, but doing nothing wasn't an option either. So, Jubei made up his mind. The next morning, Roshi rose early and wandered the streets as usual. By the time the mist burned away and the port glittered gold under the morning sun, he returned to the inn. Tanzai had been waiting nervously, and the instant he saw Roshi his face lit up like a man sighting a savior. "Captain Roshi. Great news. The port has approved it. My goods can be loaded today. I'll trouble you few to escort." Given permission, the cloth merchant wasted no time. Workers were quickly arranged, his eagerness plain. He wanted out of D-Port as soon as possible. The docks were their usual chaos, shouting laborious, creaking cargo, and the smell of salt and fish in the air. Tanzai's men carefully carried the heavy, cloth-wrapped bolts from the warehouse to the cargo ship waiting at the berth. The thuggish guards lingered nearby, watching. But the 3 shinobi could tell, their eyes weren't on the goods. They were on them. Roshi strode calmly toward Tanzai, who was bent in hushed conversation with a port official. Anko fell in step half a pace behind him, casual in posture but alert in intent. Together, their figures slipped into the narrow passage between stacked cargo and bustling dockworkers. Immediately, the distant guard's attention sharpened. Now, perched idly on a cargo box, Itachi lifted his head. Sunlight glinted off his eyes, 2 crimson tomo spinning in silent command. Like ripples spreading through a still pond, the gaze unsettled several guards, their pupils briefly unfocused. It lasted only a heartbeat. When clarity returned, Roshi was already at Tanzai's side, pointing toward the ship while Anko stood with arms folded. 2 figures. Nothing unusual. A guard blinked, confused. Where was the boy? He turned, and there was the black-haired genin, forehead protector gleaming, still seated on the cargo box, calmly watching the laborious. The guard exhaled slowly, convinced he'd imagined things. Shielded by Itachi's illusion and Anko's presence, Roshi left behind a clone and quietly slipped away toward the Wasabi estate, masking his movements. The fact that Tanzai had been permitted to depart early told him all he needed. The enemy was already on edge. He had to accelerate his own plans. The Wasabi residents remained tranquil. In the garden, Tsunade lounged against the veranda, a plain white sake cup in hand. She stared at the dappled light and shadows drifting across the gravel, the faint fragrance of alcohol mingling with the morning breeze, her posture steeped in lazy decadence. Wasabi Jiroko sat nearby, dutifully keeping her company. "Jiroko, someone's here for you," Tsunade murmured without moving her gaze. The head of the Wasabi family stiffened, then excused himself and walked briskly down the corridor. At the courtyard gate, as expected, Roshi stood waiting. Without exchanging words outside, Jiroko led him back into the reception room. "I'll be direct, Wasabi-san," Roshi began. "You've realized the true purpose behind the Chayama gang, haven't you?" Jiroko didn't answer outright. Instead, he replied evenly, "My family began as fishermen and peddlers of deep port, who joined together to defend against wandering shinobi raids. The Wasabi family has always cared only for matters within the port. Beyond that, it is thanks to Konoha's protection that D-Port has long been spared much suffering at the hands of ninja. Today's chaos is nothing more than opportunists chasing profit. And D-Port despises their greed. So, the Wasabi family was the port's local faction. Then, by contrast, the Hedges family doesn't seem to share that view," Roshi said quietly. "Those Hedges are outsiders. They only care about money." The middle-aged man's lids drooped. "They're relatives of the daimyo's former wife. They're not like us." "You have proof the Chayama gang hasn't been wiped out?" "Yes. Of course." Jiroko's eyes flashed, sharp as a blade. "Everything's prepared." Roshi tapped the table once, deliberate. "Would you be willing to present this to the people of D-Port? Will the Wasabi family report these events to the daimyo?" Jiroko's brow tightened. Report to the daimyo? What would that accomplish? Much of this chaos had the daimyo's silent tolerance. This young ninja, however earnest, didn't seem to grasp the convoluted politics of adults. Roshi's smile was calm. The daimyo of the Land of Tea has never accepted brigands as the official guards of D-Port nor approved a bandit leader as the town guard responsible for public safety. "They'll refuse to accept the evidence," Jiroko muttered, planning out the possible blowback. "They might even scold us for being petty, and use it as an excuse to move against the Wasabi family." "Exactly." Roshi's tone remained steady. "And if not for Konoha?" The reception room fell silent. Sunlight striked Roshi's face through the lattice as he met Jiroko's uncertain gaze and spoke each line with measured clarity. "You simply need to state in your report to the daimyo, under the escort of the ninja squad dispatched from Konohagakure, it's been confirmed the Chayama gang, previously entrenched in Nochipo, was never truly eradicated. The Hedges family, whether through a hunger for recognition or because they were misled by Jubei, recruited these bandits as D-Port guards. This led to the collapse of port order and widespread grievance from merchants and travelers. We request the daimyo launch a full investigation, restore order, and placate the populace." Confusion, doubt, and even a faint hint of condescension melted from Jiroko's face as if thin ice had been thrown into boiling water. Surprise and sober realization replaced it. His breath sharpened, and his back straightened. He shook his head in admiration. "Roshi-kun, you don't seem like a mere ninja. To craft such a strategy at your age is remarkable." Roshi's words made the point obvious. The daimyo would avoid direct confrontation with Konoha. For the Land of Tea, a homegrown ninja village might be desirable if it succeeded, but it was not worth a direct clash with a great nation. Why draw that conclusion? Roshi laid out the logic. First, the Black Snake Group needs the Chayama gang to launder and accumulate wealth. If a nation were truly backing them outright, such clumsy, small-time methods wouldn't be necessary. Second, the Chayama gang's attempts to legitimize themselves, with ceremonies and public-facing trappings, suggested the Land of Tea wanted plausible deniability and room to maneuver. In short, the Land of Tea could offer limited assistance while keeping plausible ignorance. That meant the fastest way to flush out the hidden Black Snake Group was to remove the Chayama gang, their fundraising arm, and force the higher players to act. Direct action against the core would be far riskier. Exposing their tool first was far smarter. So, Roshi asked again, quietly, will the Wasabi family take the lead? Jiroko's face hardened into resolve. This is what my family exists for. Tell me what to do. Tanzai stood at the gangplank of the cargo ship about to set sail, a wide smile plastered across his face. Yet beneath the sunlight, small beads of sweat glistened on his brow. He clasped Roshi's hand tightly. Roshi-sama, words cannot express my gratitude. If it weren't for you this time. His voice was loud, but his eyes flickered nervously toward the shadows near a warehouse on the dock. Several men in leather guard armor stood there, arms folded. The goods are finally on board, and now I can breathe again. He wiped his sweat, then lowered his voice to a whisper. But, are you truly not coming with the ship? I fear those people have taken a grudge against you. That incident at the city gate. Roshi smoothly withdrew his hand, his face composed as ever. Rest assured, Tanzai-san. His gaze swept over the guards, who instinctively shrank back the instant his eyes met theirs. Ah, your words put my mind at ease. Tanzai's worry instantly dissolved into an obsequious grin, as though his earlier anxiety had never existed. Rubbing his hands, he said, I've already paid for 5 days at Heifi Pavilion. Please stay there without concern. I had hoped to properly host you as thanks, but alas, the ship cannot wait. Please, accept this small token of appreciation. He produced a bulging pouch of coins as if from nowhere, pressing it toward Roshi. It was my duty, Tanzai-san. There's no need. Roshi raised a hand and gently pushed the money back. Tanzai accepted it again with a bow. If I ever need another mission, I will surely seek Konoha's Shinobi once more. Then, I must take my leave. He ascended the gangplank, looking back 3 times with each step. Only when the ship's dull horn echoed and the vessel pulled away into the busy lanes of the port, fading into the horizon, did his figure vanish from sight. Almost at that same moment, the air in the Wasabi family's estate at the heart of D-Port grew heavy. Inside a dimly lit Japanese-style chamber, even the finest incense could not mask the tension. 7 or 8 well-dressed men sat formally on tatami mats. They were the power brokers of D-Port, heads of the fishing guild, the dockworkers union, and several of the largest trading houses. Only the Heji's family was absent. Every gaze was fixed on Wasabi Jiroko, seated in the main position. He wore a dark grey formal kimono, his back straight as a pine. The humility that usually softened his gaunt features was gone, replaced by grim resolve, as if he had already burned his bridges. On the low table before him lay a thick scroll of documents and several rubbed portraits, their blurred lines still revealing cruel, unforgettable faces. Gentlemen, Jiroko's voice was quiet but cut through the silence like steel. I invited you here today to expose a lie that threatens the very survival of D-Port. He lifted one of the portraits, a man with a scarred eye and brutish expression. This is Shionzu, a ruthless bandit of the Chayama gang in Nochipo. 3 months ago, his men ambushed 3 merchant caravans from Nansho Post, leaving 17 dead or wounded. He raised another. And this one. One after another, he displayed the portraits. Under the dim yellow lamplight, each face looked more sinister than the last. Jiroko's voice tightened with restrained fury. These men, and nearly 300 desperate followers, were not annihilated as the Heji's family claims. They are here, under our noses. They hold the gates, the docks, the streets. Cloaked in the guise of a special transit tax, they are bleeding merchants dry and strangling this city. A ripple of shock swept through the room. The elderly president of the fishing guild spoke, trembling, Jiroko, this is no trivial accusation. Without undeniable proof. The proof is here. Jiroko slammed the thick bundle onto the table. From the tokens left at the Nochipo hideout to the testimony of escaped laborers and even the tattoos they failed to conceal. He drew a deep breath, his gaze sweeping across the startled, wavering faces. Then he struck the final blow. More importantly, all this evidence was collected and verified with the assistance of a Konoha Shinobi squad on an official guard mission. Roshi, Special Jonin. Konoha. The single word dropped like a boulder into a still pond, sending ripples through the men's hearts. Where there had been doubt, their expressions grew complicated. Precisely. Jiroko's voice deepened, seeing the shift in their eyes. I have already dispatched envoys to the capital with the evidence and our letters. The daimyo will know the truth. And I ask that when you return to your homes, you ready your men and sharpen your blades. Together, we will purge these jackals from D-Port. Silence fell over the room. The prominent figures exchanged looks, sending quick, wordless messages. Some ignited with anger and nodded vigorously. Others frowned, fingers tapping their knees in thought. At last the old president of the fishing guild spoke slowly. If a Konoha shinobi testifies and these material proofs, he nodded toward the documents, are genuine, then we accept it. We'll return and make preparations. He hesitated, changing tone. That said, the Heijis family currently holds authority here, and those people were appointed by them. It would be unwise to move without an order from the daimyo. Once his order arrives, however, we will purge these parasites at once. Exactly. We should wait for the daimyo's command. The others echoed the sentiment. We believe Jiroko and the evidence, but not a single man will act until the official word comes down. Jiroko had expected this. These old foxes wanted him to do the dirty work, then use his hand to strike the cancer the Heijis family had fostered, yet they refused to risk anything until the dust settled. He showed no disappointment. Instead, he nodded solemnly. What you say is true. Without a formal mandate, words fall flat. Without words, nothing succeeds. I understand. We wait on the daimyo's judgment. Prepare thoroughly now, so when the moment comes, we may strike and finish it in one blow. Of course. Rest assured, head of the Wasabi family. They rose, bowed in ceremony, faces set with solemn calculation, and departed in a hurry. The tatami room emptied, and only the faint scent of incense lingered. Almost as the dignitaries left the gate, secret messages, quick as insects trapped in a web, began to vibrate through different channels. Outside the center of town, in a dim, ragged room facing a broken shipyard, daylight was mostly blocked by tarpaulins and the air tasted of cheap tobacco. Jubei sat cross-legged in the deepest shadow, his katana across his knees. A lean man knelt before him, voice low and urgent. Wasabi Jiroko gathered them, showed papers and portraits, said it's irrefutable. Said a Konoha ninja helped obtain it. He's sending it to the daimyo. The order arrives tomorrow. He'll move once the order is in hand. Jubei's half-closed eyes snapped open. The scabbard on his lap seemed to hum. So that's it. The old man sought Konoha's endorsement. Reporting to the daimyo. Jubei's lips curled into a thin, dangerous smile. The old fool moves fast. He didn't know, and didn't need to know, how the daimyo would react. Deny the evidence? Send an elder tied to the Heijis? Or, seeing Konoha's involvement, quietly abandon the Chayama gang? None of that mattered. The messenger had to be silenced, so the daimyo never saw the proof. Jubei rose, his tall shadow swallowing the room and pinning the kneeling subordinate in its pressure. Where are the Konoha ninja now? At Heifi Pavilion. We're watching them. Arrange constant surveillance on the Wasabi family. His voice was a command. Yes. As the man left, Jubei spoke into the dark. Have Shosha eliminate the Wasabi messenger. Genshoku, shadow the Konoha ninjas. A figure detached from the gloom. Deep sockets framed iridescent green pupils. A snarling dog tattoo shaded beneath his eyes. Feathers and bone threaded through his unkempt hair. A copper coin clamped between his teeth. A patchwork kasaya hung on his frame. A bell-marked food jingling at his wrist. Something's off, Genshoku muttered, the coin muffling his words. The samurai ordnance replied coldly, it's irrelevant now. We've invested too much. Dealing with Konoha was always part of the plan. Only now it comes sooner than expected. The sea breeze, heavy with salt and the stench of fish, whipped through the ship's cabin. The wooden hull groaned under the crashing waves, each sway turning the messenger beside Roshi a shade paler. He was a capable young man under normal circumstances, but now he clutched at his clothes with white-knuckled fists, his eyes flicking nervously toward the churning, dark blue sea beyond the porthole. They're chasing us. Hurry! Get your weapons, harpoons, now. Above, the sailors' rough shouts rang out across the deck, mingling with the sharp clang of metal. The steady rhythm of the voyage shattered into chaos. Meanwhile, Roshi sat cross-legged on the damp floorboards, his eyes closed, body rising and falling in time with the ship's pitch. He looked as unshakable as a stone in a storm. The messenger's panic didn't ripple him in the slightest. They're here. His eyes opened, calm and unhurried, and he rose smoothly, his movements flowing with the ship's sway instead of against it. Stay put, he ordered, halting the messenger who was about to stand. The cabin door creaked as Roshi pushed it open. He stepped onto the deck, behind a row of sailors bracing harpoons with pale knuckles, their eyes wide with fear. His gaze fixed on the sea. A figure was racing across the waves, fast and steady, skimming the surface of the water with practiced steps. Tall, lean, clad in a sleeveless black bodysuit beneath a dark breastplate that gleamed coldly in the sun. A mask hid his face, leaving only eyes sharp as a hawk's visible. Roshi's eyes narrowed. Black Snake Group, or just one of their men. To chase a ship so far, balancing on open water without faltering, the chakra reserves and control required put the enemy at least at the elite Chunin level. If this was only a subordinate, then the Black Snake Group's true strength was even more formidable than his initial estimate. At the same time, back at Heifi Pavilion Inn, a shadow slipped in through the first-floor lobby like smoke, merging seamlessly with the bustle of waiters, guests, and the innkeeper. Despite his outlandish appearance, no one seemed to notice him. Their eyes slid past as if he wasn't there. Genshoku. His ears caught every sound. His senses extended upward. From the 3 rooms above, he felt them clearly. 3 distinct life forces, each sharp, condensed, and undeniably shinobi. Konoha ninja, all here, he muttered. He didn't climb the stairs, but the pulse of their chakra signatures was unmistakable. Yet unease gnawed at him. Wasabi Jiroko had been anything but discreet, gathering the port's leaders, flaunting his evidence, declaring he'd already sent a messenger to the daimyo, and invoking Konoha's name to add weight. It was too loud, too obvious. A provocation daring his enemies to respond immediately. If that was the case, then why were all 3 Konoha shinobi still here? Was the messenger who left just a decoy? Did the real courier already slip away in secret? But then, why had no news come from the daimyo's palace yet? The chakra upstairs was real, he confirmed again. No illusion. No clone. Or, had Konoha sent reinforcements he couldn't sense? Genshoku's thoughts churned, and unease coiled in his gut. He turned on his heel, slipping out into the street. The wind carried the bustle of D-port around him. He scanned upward, and froze. From a half-open window on the top floor, a pair of calm eyes stared down at him. His chest tightened. Instinct kicked in. He leapt back several paces, wrist rising. The bell tied there, carved with the character Shoku, rang with a low, urgent hum. An invisible ripple spread out, cloaking his body. No genjutsu. No barrier trap. He exhaled once, steadying his breath, and lifted his gaze again. The eyes were still there, watching, unblinking. This time, 3 figures appeared behind the window. Roshi, Anko, and Itachi. Their eyes, calm and unyielding, fixed on Genshoku with identical indifference. Shadow clone jutsu. Genshoku muttered, fury and caution flaring at once. So that explained it. 3 distinct chakra signatures, yet only a single scent. Damn clever. He hissed, the copper coin gritting between his teeth, scraping faintly. To divide chakra into 3 while keeping each clone strong enough to fool him. That meant the real one was elsewhere. Likely the captain himself remained, while the ones dispatched were only the kid and the kunoichi. With Shoshi's strength, those 2 would be easy prey. That left Genshoku with one task: pin down this so-called captain. Keep him rooted here in Heifi Pavilion until Shosha succeeds, or force him to move first and expose a weakness. Abandoning his attempt to peer deeper into the inn, Genshoku melted into the street's shadows. The bell tied at his wrist gave off a steady, low chime, like a serpent's tongue tasting the air before a strike, as an invisible field spread outward, slowly enveloping the pavilion. On the third floor of Heifi Pavilion, Roshi stood at the window, watching Genshoku's form vanish into the darkened street corner. Through the unique sensory link of his wood clones, the information synchronized instantly. The main body intercepted at sea, Genshoku lurking here. The bait is taken. Diversion begins. At his thought, the two wood clones behind him, shaped as Anko and Itachi, slipped wordlessly to a corner. Their forms unraveled, crumbling into blocks of wood that clattered to the floor. The chakra they carried did not dissipate, but returned to the clone at the window like rivers flowing back into the sea. Though his Sage Mode training was still incomplete, Roshi's relentless practice had honed his chakra control to a razor's edge. Especially with wood release clones, he could split, reclaim chakra with ease. Time shifted back, just after Tanzai's cargo ship set sail. The plan splits three ways, Roshi said evenly, standing in the inn-room with Anko and Itachi. First is the messenger. I'll take that route myself. Since Jiroko openly reported to the daimyo, the enemy will likely focus on intercepting him. That path has the highest chance of encountering the Black Snake Group's core or their elites. Key intelligence will come from there. Anko crossed her arms, brow arched. And here? What about Old Man Wasabi's place? Heifi Pavilion must look as if all three of us remain here. It serves two purposes: misleading scouts and acting as bait for any ninja bold enough to investigate. That's why I'll leave behind clones to impersonate us. His gaze swept over them both. Clones? Huh? If you're using shadow clones, won't your chakra get shredded, Roshi? Anko asked, frowning. Splitting chakra evenly between multiple bodies, on top of combat, was no small burden. It'll hold. Roshi gave no further explanation. He had no intention of revealing the secret of wood release. Anko clicked her tongue, but didn't press. Fine. Then Itachi and I take the third route, the Wasabi estate. Correct. If the enemy targets the Wasabi family directly, they'll be facing more than assassination, they'll bring numbers. A single Jonin can keep Jiroko safe from small strikes, but if the enemy commits to a full assault. Roshi's voice grew heavier. Shizune's medical ninjutsu won't be enough. And Tsunade. Once blood is spilled, her presence could turn into a liability the enemy might exploit. So, Itachi and Anko's task was clear: reinforcement, should the enemy strike the Wasabi family in force. Before dismissing them, Roshi added one final instruction. The person at the Wasabi estate is an exceptional medical ninja. Trust her. But don't ask questions about her background. Consider that a personal request from me. Anko scratched her cheek with a crooked smile. A request from the captain. He? Guess I'll keep my mouth shut. But, you know what I mean, Roshi. He did. After Orochimaru's defection, Anko had no patience for secrets that endangered the village. If this truly touched Konoha's safety, she would report it regardless of sentiment. Itachi, however, only gave a quiet nod. Knowing Roshi's true identity, the Uchiha understood better than anyone. This was the last person who would ever betray the leaf. Roshi stood balanced on the rolling sea, chakra flowing beneath his feet as if anchoring him to an invisible reef. Across from him, Shosha also stood on the waves, his black chest plate catching the pale light of the sky with a cold, metallic sheen. With a flick of his wrist, Roshi summoned the scroll Wasabi Jiroko had entrusted to him, the damning evidence of the Chayama gang's crimes, along with a letter to the daimyo. Meeting Shoshi's piercing gaze, his voice cut through the roar of the tide. There are 2 copies. One with the messenger, one with me. If you strike that ship, I'll head for Naki Island and deliver this straight to the daimyo myself. Or... His tone sharpened. We settle this here. I promise that ship won't budge until one of us falls. Shoshi's lone visible eye narrowed. A low, metallic rasp escaped his throat, halfway between a chuckle and the grind of rusted gears. A Konoha ninja. So your aim is me. Interesting. He tilted his head, vertebrae clicking like clashing blades. Good. Saves me the trouble. As you wish. The instant the words left his lips, he moved. Not forward, sideways, unnaturally fluid. A black blur ripped across the waves between them. His right arm. It had stretched grotesquely long, skin a bluish-gray, ending in hooked claws with nails like obsidian. The air itself seemed to sour with a sickly-sweet stench as it streaked for Rosh's face. The strike was so fast it left only a warped afterimage. Rosh's pupils contracted. Chakra flared at his soles, propelling him diagonally across the water in a sharp glide. The claws grazed his vest, tearing a thin line across the fabric. Missed. But Shoshi's eyes didn't flicker. His elongated arm twisted in midair like a whip without bones, snapping back at a sharper, crueler angle, straight for Rosh's exposed back. At the same time, Shoshi's own body skimmed over the waves, drawn forward by the arm's momentum, gliding like a phantom. Suspended in midair with nothing to brace against, Roshi exhaled. His core muscles coiled, twisting his body mid-flight. His right hand snapped into his pouch, 3 kunai flashing between his fingers. With a single whip of his wrist, he launched them not at Shosha, but precisely at the joint of the grotesque arm. Clang! The kunai bit, but the arm was like striking an oil-hardened vine. Only shallow marks scored its hide before the blades were knocked aside, vanishing into the sea. The whip arm barely slowed, carving forward. Hard as iron. Roshi landed on the water, chakra locking him steady. His hands blurred into seals. Water release, water shockwave. The ocean itself surged at his call. The sea roared upward, a towering wall of water crashing forward with crushing force. It swallowed Shosha whole, arm and all, in a foaming deluge. Boom! The waves detonated in spray, drowning the battlefield in white mist. Rule of Shinobi combat. Never assume the enemy is down. Don't stand and admire your strike. Don't get greedy. Move. Roshi had already begun his retreat when, Gurgruga. A guttural, inhuman rasp vibrated just above him. A shadow burst from the collapsing wall of water. Not an arm. A head. Shoshi's neck had stretched as grotesquely as his limb, extending several meters. His face lunged like a chained flail, jaws wide. The stench hit first, rotten sweet and suffocating. The mask loomed inches away, its single eye burning cold green. His mouth yawned open, 2 rows of serrated teeth bared, dripping with strands of viscous, greenish fluid. Roshi's body arched backward, almost parallel to the sea's surface. At the last instant, his left palm slapped the waves, chakra exploding beneath it. The recoil shot him skimming backward across the water like a silver fish. His right hand whipped up, kunai flashing. Fut! The blade drove into the side of Shoshi's outstretched neck. But instead of the clean give of flesh and bone, Roshi felt resistance like stabbing into slick, unyielding rubber. The kunai sank barely an inch before locking in place, the texture both revolting and unnatural. The strike knocked Shoshi's head off balance, but those eerie green eyes never wavered. They fixed on Roshi with a predator's hunger, and the stench rolling from his fang more thickened in the air. Hiss! The sound was inhuman, scraping from deep within his throat. His neck twisted violently around the embedded kunai, serpentine and grotesque, jaws snapping at Roshi from an impossible angle. Roshi didn't cling to the weapon. He released it instantly, retreating on the momentum, fingers already flashing into seals. Water release, water dragon bullet. The sea answered his call with a furious roar. Water churned and surged upward, condensing into a colossal dragon of raging current. Scales of spray glittered in the dim light as it coiled high, bellowing before it dove. Its cavernous jaws crashed down toward Shoshi's lunging head, and the twisted body behind it. Rumble! The impact tore across the sea like a natural disaster. A towering column of water erupted skyward, waves collapsing outward in a torrential downpour. Foam and shattered spray pelted everything within reach, while the ocean itself was gouged into a vast crater of white water and turbulence. But as the mist thinned, Roshi's eyes narrowed. Shosha was still there, standing, unmoved. His grotesque arm and elongated neck recoiled with unsettling flexibility, shrinking back into place as if nothing had happened. At his throat, the kunai's wound peeled open to reveal bluish-purple flesh, yet no blood spilled. Instead, a viscous black tar oozed from the edges, writhing like living sludge as it stitched the gash shut before Roche's eyes. His chest plate bore only shallow dents and chalky white scratches from the dragon's crushing blow. Hardly more than cosmetic. Shosha raised a hand, smearing the black liquid from his healing wound across his fingertip. He stared at it for a moment, then dragged his crimson tongue over it with slow, deliberate malice. The gesture was utterly wrong, bestial, obscene. When his gaze lifted again, the mocking coldness was gone. In its place burned raw cruelty, the thrill of a predator that had just found its prey. Kono has ninjutsu. His voice rasped, low and jagged. Is nothing special. I wonder, his teeth glinted in a twisted grin, what your blood will taste like. He leaned forward, arms loose at his sides, black nails extending like hooked talons. Every joint in his body ticked with quiet, dreadful clacks, like weapons being primed. Roche's expression remained unreadable, but his thoughts raced. So resilient. Water release barely dents him, and even direct cuts won't pierce that altered flesh. His skin, his organs, engineered for endurance, for survival. But his eyes flicked once more to the dark breastplate covering Shoshi's chest, the only part of him that hadn't flexed and healed like the rest. That armor. It may be the key. A shrill screech split through the crash of the waves as Shoshi's arms and neck snapped outward, writhing with unnatural flexibility and power, like a boa constrictor striking from every angle at once. His grey-blue limbs sliced through the air with a piercing whistle, fingertips glowing faintly as they wove together into a deadly net, cutting off every avenue of Roche's escape. Roche's body spun and twisted atop the rolling waves like a top on the verge of collapse. Every shift of the tide carried him just enough to slip past the onslaught, his evasions honed to the very edge of possibility. Rip, rip, rip. Claws grazed his forehead, shoulders, ribs, each swipe missing by a hair, the air itself tearing with every strike. The rancid wind they carried stung his skin, and fresh rips split open across his vest. Fibers hissed as they blackened and curled, poisoned at the edges. Even so, Roche's form traced a phantom's path across the water, his movements unpredictable and fluid. But Shosha only grew more frenzied. His limbs lashed like wild whips, battering the sea and sending curtains of spray into the sky. A guttural roar bubbled in his throat, feral and delighted, as though savoring the kill before the blood was spilled. Water release. Water 1,000 needles. The spray and droplets suspended in the air crystallized into gleaming senbon, hundreds upon hundreds. Shosha barked out a manic laugh. Pointless. Absolutely pointless, boy. But Roche's eyes didn't flicker. His hand sealed again, his voice calm and cutting through the storm, wind release, raging current. Two techniques fused as his chakra surged. Compound ninjutsu, stormy rain 1,000 needles. Water as bone. Wind as blade. He inhaled deep, his chest swelling like a bellows, then exhaled with ferocious force. Whoosh! A hurricane tore free, so dense it seemed almost solid. Countless needles, hair-thin yet honed to killing points, spun with savage speed within its gale. Propelled by the storm, they became a torrent of destruction, blue and white rain that howled toward Shosha like the wheel of a shinigami. The maelstrom swallowed him whole. Every limb, every grotesque extension of his body, vanished into the shredding storm of needles. Shoshi's wild grin faltered. His instincts screamed warning. With a sharp cry, he wrenched his limbs back like serpents recoiling to the nest, curling inward. Arms crossed over his head, legs bent low, his entire frame hunched to shield the chest plate beneath. A dense glow of grey-blue chakra flared across his exposed skin, hardening it against the storm. Puff, puff, puff. The sound was relentless, like monsoon rain battering giant leaves. Needles slammed into his arms, shredding grey-blue skin into pale gouges before breaking apart in sprays of mist. His defense held, but only barely. Viscous black liquid oozed from new scratches, revealing sinewy purple-blue muscle beneath. And still the storm raged. No matter how tightly he curled, there were gaps. The torrent sought them out, slipping through, burrowing in. Needles hissed into the chest plate with metallic fury. Clang, 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 clang. Each strike sparked violently across the dark armor, scattering light like fireworks over midnight steel. The relentless barrage sent high-frequency tremors shuddering through the plates, drilling vibration deep into Shoshi's body. His frame convulsed beneath the storm, battered as though an invisible giant pounded him with hammer blows. The armor rang with shrieking protest. Pockmarks cratered its surface. Edges bent and warped under the unceasing rain. Then, crack! A fingernail-sized plate, worn down by dozens of consecutive impacts, split apart with a screech of metal. The fragment tore free, tumbling into the foaming sea below. The moment the broken plate clattered into the sea, Shosha froze mid-defense. Through the gap in his crossed arms, his cold green eyes locked on Roshi, and constricted with raw, instinctive fear. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't pride. It was something deeper, primal, a terror that cut through his nerves like lightning. His hand shot to his chest, clutching the exposed gap in his armor with frantic speed. The movement was so desperate, so undignified, it reeked of panic. So that's it. A sharp glint lit Roshi's eyes. This strange ninja's sleeveless body was hardened everywhere by his cursed flesh, except where he guarded with armor. The chest plate wasn't decoration. It was protection. A weakness. You dare. Shoshi's roar shook with fury and shame, his voice fraying into something inhuman. He tore his arms from his guard, his mask twisting in rage. His pupils narrowed into bestial slits, the sickly grey-blue sheen of his skin intensifying. Black fluid bubbled from the wounds on his arms and neck, boiling over the surface, sealing the flesh while spreading a putrid, sweet stench. He had abandoned all defense. His arms elongated violently, whipping forward like colossal, barbed hammers. They tore through the air, aiming to crush Roshi head-on. His assault was pure frenzy, an exchange of wounds, death for death. But behind that violence, his heart churned worse than the waves. The water needles were still pouring down in endless torrents, wind-fed and merciless. Such a technique should drain oceans of chakra. Yet the Konoha ninja before him showed no sign of strain, calm, controlled, inexhaustible. If this drags on, I'll be crushed before he even bleeds. For the first time, a serpent of doubt coiled in his chest. Beneath his rage, retreat hissed its tempting whisper. And in that instant of hesitation, the slightest pause betrayed him. Roshi moved. One step forward. One breath. One seal. Water release. Reverse vortex coffin. The sea roared in answer. Tens of meters ahead, the water convulsed as though cupped by an invisible giant hand. 4 towering whirlpools erupted upward, thick water walls spinning with thunderous force. Each wall churned like a grinding millstone, encircling Shosha in an instant. His claws slammed against them. Thump! Thump! Spray burst outward, the walls trembling under the blow, but they held. Worse, the spinning current recoiled his strength back into his own body, driving him stumbling. Pain lanced through his arms, making his blood boil. Shoshi's eyes widened. The rotating prison sealed every path, the sucking current dragging even his massive frame toward its walls. Every strike he threw was swallowed, redirected, and hurled back at him with multiplied force. Outside, Roshi stood like stone against the gale, one hand outstretched, fingers spread, holding the cage steady with effortless control. His hair lifted in the sea wind, his gaze fixed, cold and merciless, like a judge passing sentence. Inside, Shosha was reduced to a grotesque insect caught in amber. Dim light filtered through the spinning walls, broken into flickers. The deafening roar of churning water filled his ears, smothering thought. His elongated limbs lashed and lashed again, but every blow was neutralized, his body buckling under the recoil. Black ichor poured from the gashes in his skin, struggling to seal his wounds. But the high-speed currents ripped the healing away, shredding it faster than it could mend. His chest plate, battered and cracked, gleamed under the dim light. And through that small, fatal gap, a single jet of water pierced through. It slipped past the flailing limbs, through the armor's wound, and drove clean through his body. Blood gushed. Shoshi's struggles faltered. His limbs sagged, then collapsed, his monstrous form dragged down by the torrent. The ninja, who moments ago raged like a beast, fell silent at last. Rogue ninja, hunters, lone wolves, shadows that civilians avoided yet whispered about in fear. To the powerful, they were tools to be despised but used. To the clans, they were wild dogs and vermin. To the great villages, they were rot that refused to be cut away. Jubei didn't care for such labels. Power was the only truth. He knew this well. For years he led the Black Snake Group, pillaging, selling blades for hire, and killing without hesitation. As long as they didn't provoke the great behemoths that ruled the continent, the hidden villages, their lives were easier than most rogues could ever dream. He believed he had mastered survival in the cracks of this world. Until those eyes found him. Cold, serpentine, unblinking. An interesting life. The voice was soft, almost effeminate, yet carried a chill that slithered down the spine. Let me see where your limits lie. Pinned by an invisible force, Jubei felt his bones strain, his very soul laid bare under that gaze. The power he had relied on, the strength that made him a predator in the wilderness, became nothing more than a child's toy in those hands. They were caught, played with, then discarded like waste. You brought me a moment of amusement. But in the end, you're still defective products. That voice lingered like venom on a wound. If not for those flies chasing me so tirelessly, perhaps I'd have found some use for you. Orokaimaru. Once one of Konoha's legendary Sannin. Now a rogue ninja. Even hunted, even cornered. His shadow was enough to reduce men like Jubei to trembling prey. Should we join a village? Someone rasped after a long silence, lungs still heaving. The darkness stilled. Join a minor village? Another spat. Stable. Maybe. But poor as dirt. And they'd never risk taking us in. What about the great villages? Ha! You think they'd let us walk in? They'd gut us, strip us of every secret, then chain us as the lowest dogs. Die on their orders for scraps. The whispers crawled through the dark like insects, bitter and venomous. Dependence? Servitude? The thought festered in Jubei's heart like poison. Then another idea, mad, arrogant, irresistible, flared to life. Then we'll build one ourselves, he snarled. His voice sliced through the muttering, raw and desperate. A village of our own. And so the search began. Remote lands lacked wealth. Central lands were death traps. But after a long search, the land of tea emerged as the perfect target. Far from the wars of the Shinobi world, yet rich enough to support a village of its own. They could not approach the daimyo directly. Jubei chose Nochipo. He united the scattered bandits into the Chayama gang, while the Black Snake Group, masquerading as pirates, unleashed terror upon the sea route to Nozaki Island. Merchant ships sank. Trade collapsed. Panic spread like fire. And they again emerged as saviors. Finally, the daimyo sent an envoy. Your strength is remarkable. The land of tea will not forget your aid in resolving this sea crisis. The envoy's tone was polite, but his eyes weighed Jubei carefully. Yet, Konohagakure has long been our ally. To change course so suddenly is no small matter. Lowering his voice, the envoy added, if you establish a foundation, prove your village can stand, then mission contracts will follow. The daimyo will open doors of convenience. Doors of convenience. Suppress the Wasabi family, elevate the Hejis, and let the Chayama gang step into the light. But a village cost money. Vast sums of it. Tools, strongholds, recruitment, every step bled Rio. Their savings were a drop in the ocean. And so, they seized Nochipo and D. Every street, every merchant, every traveler, bled dry to fund their dream. Now, as Jubei lowered his gaze from the inn's shadowed outline beneath the grey sky, a scarred captain hurried over and whispered his report. Only one figure remained inside Heifi Pavilion. The other two must have gone to guard the messenger. Shosha should have handled a regular jonin without issue. Yet no word had come. Something had gone wrong. Jubei frowned. With Shoshi's strength, defeat was possible. But death? No. Impossible. That left only the Konoha Shinobi in play, and perhaps one or two hidden pieces under Jiroko's sleeve. But only one or two. If Jiroko truly had more, he would have already unleashed them against the Chayama gang. Reinforce Shosha? Throw more men at the messenger's route? No. If the first interception failed, sending reinforcements would only be too little, too late. Chasing after the courier now risked scattering their strength and missing the real opportunity. Better to show power, not scatter it. There was only one clean solution. Kill Wasabi Jiroko. Remove him, and that ironclad evidence would have no owner. Just a story the Wasabi house had fabricated. The daimyo could discard it, accuse Jiroko of conspiracy, and the whole scandal would collapse with him. Remove the head, and the rot beneath would die with it. Gather the men, Jubei ordered, his voice flat and iron true. Lock down the city. Sir? The reason? The scarred captain flinched, sweat beading on his brow. We can't suppress everyone. This'll spark backlash. Their freedom to roam the city so brazenly had depended on the other faction's worry about the daimyo's favor toward the Hejis, on hesitation, not consent. A sudden, sweeping lockdown would shred that fragile equilibrium and force every guild and household to choose a side. Jubei's eyes, sunk beneath a shadowed brow, were cold as wells, the outline of the Wasabi house reflected in them. Murderous intent coiled there, and the scarred man swallowed the rest of his protest. HMPH. Jubei's snort was contempt itself. Good. Let them be vigilant. The captain's face shifted as realization clicked. Once the lockdown began, the city's leaders would lock their doors and pull their men in, convinced chaos was the goal. In that panic, even Jiroko's allies would be rooted to their own gates, unable to rush to his aid. An assault on the Wasabi house would need elite power, not the common thugs of Chayama. The gang's job was to frighten and confuse, make every fish slip back into its hole so the hunters could strike. Yes, sir. Immediately. The captain bowed, then fled, boots thudding over rotten boards, his sword sheath rasping the doorframe. Silence swallowed the room. Wind moaned through the broken window as Jubei's fingers tightened on his sword hilt. Wasabi Jiroko. Roshi had given instructions before he left, so when Anko and Itachi arrived at the Wasabi estate, they instinctively kept their distance. No needless chatter, no probing questions. Shizune, however, moved first. Noticing the two younger shinobi's guarded posture, she closed the gap with careful steps. I'm Shizune, she said softly. I used to live in Konoha, but I left with my teacher. It's been 7 or 8 years. She offered her background plainly. At the name of Konoha, the tension in Anko's shoulders eased. A genuine smile broke through. Shizune-senpai is already a jonin, right? No. Shizune shook her head. Serious. I was only a chunin when I left, and I still am. Her gaze flicked around before she lowered her voice. My ninja registration is 010800. Anko Mitarashi, chunin. The purple-haired Kanoichi introduced herself readily. The proper number lent Shizune immediate credibility. Uchiha Itachi, genin. The black-haired boy's reply was brief and polite. Roshi mentioned you before he departed. Shizune inclined her head. I specialize in medical ninjutsu. If you get hurt, come to me. And, for combat support, I do have some self-defense jutsus. She wasn't a talker by nature, but speaking to two village juniors stirred an old connection. Her calm, honest demeanor slowly put Anko at ease. Shizune's teacher. Anko began, then clamped a hand over her mouth. Sorry, that was rude. It's all right. Shizune's voice was gentle. My teacher retired. I retired with her. A muffled commotion cut through them from the Wasabi courtyard. Jiroko burst back through the sliding doors, his face storm dark. The city gates are closed, he barked. They declared an emergency lockdown. Jubei is making a move. Shizune stepped forward immediately. Move to the backyard. We'll hold the front. Itachi and Anko exchanged a look. Itachi melted into the corridor's shadow, part of the plan. He would observe, unseen, and strike when the moment came. Jiroko shook his head. No. Their target is me. If I hide, they'll sweep to the back of the house. He looked to Shizune and Anko. A ninja who watches from the shadows gains the advantage, but if I conceal myself, you'll be the ones forced into exposure. He inhaled. Steady. I'll take the front courtyard with my men. When to act is your call. The head of the Wasabi family bowed deeply to them both, then glanced toward the corridor where Itachi had slipped away and offered another solemn bow. Everything, entrusted to you. 4D port, for the Wasabi family. I will not forget this. He turned then, shoulders squared, and strode toward the front, resolve stealing him like armor. Anko watched his retreating back and breathed, "This Wasabi-san. He's a good man." "Indeed," Shizune replied softly. "He was my teacher's friend." Tension thickened in the courtyard. The metallic rattle of armor, the muffled commands of guards, and the glint of blades being drawn all wove together into a taut hush. Shizune fell silent, checked her tool pouch, and rolled back her sleeve to inspect the shuriken launcher strapped to her arm. Anko's grin vanished too. Her right hand slid into the wide purple sleeve of her coat, fingers finding the familiar weight of a kunai. Minutes crawled by like hours. The front guard's breath was audible, their knuckles white on hilts. Every gust of wind over the wall sounded like approaching boots. The whole estate held its breath. Suddenly, boom! A deafening blast shattered the stillness. The heavy front gate of the Wasabi house shuddered as if struck by an invisible battering ram. The door and its wooden frames warped, splintered, and blew inward. Splinters sprayed like a furious rain. Through the choking dust, 3 silhouettes strode over the wreckage, dawned as if from the mouth of some hellish rift, then slowed into the front courtyard. The man leading them was Jubei himself, the city guard captain. His white hari snapped in the blast wind. He kept his katana sheathed, but the air around him pulsed with a palpable, chilling killing intent. The nearest Wasabi guard staggered back, faces drained of color. To Jubei's left stood a figure more terrifying than any thug, his left arm bound in blood-darkened rags, fingers pale and unnaturally sharp as bone. A filthy crimson sash hung from his sleeve. His left eye was a dull, dead amber, vacant as a fish's, and it swept the courtyard with clinical indifference. To Jubei's right, another silhouette slouched beneath an oilskin cloak mottled with mildew and salt stains. The hood shadowed a gray-green jaw and cracked, bloodless lips, as if the man had risen from some drowned grave. Slung over his shoulder was a hulking brown gourd, half a person's height, its surface slick with moss, an object as heavy and uncanny as the figure who bore it. Their arrival chilled the courtyard as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. The Wasabi guards felt their courage drain away. Weapons trembled in white-knuckled hands beneath an utterly inhuman pressure. Jubei's gaze, a cold edge, cut across the trembling defenders and landed on Wasabi Jiroko in the center. A humorless curl touched his mouth. His voice, low and calm, rolled across the courtyard like distant thunder. "Wasabi Jiroko, your road ends here." His eyes swept the assembled men again before returning to Jiroko's face. The final words fell like a guillotine. "And these insects, they'll be crushed along with you." Martial law fell over D port like a tightening net. The clamor of the docks was cut off in an instant. Heavy barricades were rolled into the streets as Chayama thugs, spears and short swords in hand, barked orders, dispersing crowds and forcing shops to shutter. Panic rippled through the city like a stone dropped in still water. The city's usual din gave way to the crisp clip of hooves on cobblestones, crude commands, and the occasional choked sob. An electric, suffocating tension hung in the air. At Heifi Pavilion the inn's doors were bolted fast. The owner's face was pale with sweat as he shepherded frightened guests back to their rooms and urged them to lock their doors. Then, breath steadying, he climbed to the 3rd floor and knocked at the room with the best view. "Ninja-sama." His voice trembled only faintly. "The city is under martial law. It's chaotic outside. They say they're searching for bandits. If you have no urgent need, please remain inside. If you require anything, tell us. We'll do everything we can." "Understood. Thanks for the warning. We'll handle it," Roshi answered calmly. Through the sensory link with his would-release clone, everything his main body felt at sea, every shock, every change in the city, synchronized instantly. The bait had worked in part. A ninja with strange secret techniques had been caught. But interrogation was never Roshi's strength, and this opponent had kept silent, closing off every lead. The original plan had been modest: lure out 1 or 2 shinobi, capture them, and then use interrogation or sharing in genjutsu via Itachi to extract intelligence. If that failed, bring the prisoner back to the village's intel division. Roshi had not expected such decisiveness from the enemy. Martial law and the mass deployment of Chayama troops would cow the city's other powers, forcing guilds and merchants to fall back and seal their defenses, but such a show of force could not be sustained. Whoever ordered it sought a quick, crushing blow. They aimed to seize the Wasabi estate inside a narrow window, and to do that they needed more than common thugs, they needed shinobi. So far the Chayama gang's only confirmed ninja had been Jubei. Now the corpse on the deck and the shadow prowling near Heifi Pavilion had proven otherwise. 2 enemy shinobi were already on the field. The Wasabi House's remaining defenders might theoretically hold against Jubei. Theoretically. The Black Snake Group's true strength and placements were still unknown. Considering the worst-case scenario, Roshi knew it was time to act. "One last chance," he said to the captive on the deck. "Name." Shosha bared blood-stained fangs, then clamped his eyes shut. Whether Roshi intended to torture, threaten, or bargain, silence remained his choice, for his comrades, for his cause. Roshi drew a steady breath. He had hoped this final exchange might crack the man, confirm his allegiance. It hadn't. Leaving a living shinobi with secret techniques and unbroken will in the middle of a collapsing operation would be like burying a live bomb. The decision hardened in him. The burden of intelligence fell to his blade. He did not approach theatrically, just a precise motion. A kunai struck true, piercing the man's heart. When life ceased, Roshi unrolled a sealing scroll and wrapped the corpse. Last time he had left part of the body behind, preserving the secret of his would release. This time there was no such reservation. The man carried no unspeakable jutsu that needed hiding. He would bring the whole body back to Konoha so the village could study the technique and learn what it could. Rogue shinobi. Always troublesome. After half a day of planning, the Black Snake Group remained a shadowy enigma. Roshi turned to the pale messenger beside him, a young man clutching the scroll tube as if it were his lifeline. The boy's knees nearly buckled under the weight of fear. The plan has changed. Roshi's tone was steady and resolute. Return at once to the waters off D Port. There's no need to head for the Daimyo's palace. Simply patrol the sea and wait for my signal. The messenger's eyes widened. Sir? But, this evidence, the evidence matters. Roshi cut him off, gaze sharp as a blade. But rushing to the palace now is even more dangerous. Do you understand? Without me there, who can say if the daimyo would spare your life? There's no need to gamble it away. The boy met Roshi's eyes, and something in their unshakable calm anchored his spiraling thoughts. He swallowed hard, then nodded again and again. Yes, sir. I understand. Roshi said nothing more. His figure flickered, vanishing from the doorway. In the next instant, he was atop the tallest mast at the stern, cloths snapping in the sea wind. He cast a single glance toward D Port, then blurred into an afterimage, stepping across the waves, racing toward the city locked under martial law. At Heifi Pavilion, a thin sliver of lamplight slipped through the curtains, falling across the face of Roshi's wood clone. The main body's choice and movements registered instantly. It was time to act. Still, that stubborn rogue ninja proved one thing. Capturing him alive was possible, but forcing answers from him was nearly impossible. And yet, intelligence remained paramount. At the very least, Roshi needed confirmation. Was this man truly of the Black Snake Group? What was their structure, their purpose? He pushed open the wooden window frame with a faint creak, barely audible beneath the occasional shouts echoing from the street. Roshi didn't lean out, but let his calm gaze settle into the thick shadows pooling at the corner below. Watched me for so long. Aren't you tired? In the darkness, Genshoku's fluorescent green pupils shrank to slits. He hadn't expected the Konoha shinobi to slice through the thin veil of silence first. His canines ground down on the copper coin between his teeth, the bitter metal sting keeping him sharp. Konoha ninja, always sharp, Genshoku rasped, his voice like sandpaper dragged across steel, muffled by the coin. He stepped half a pace into the light. His oilskin cloak gleamed faintly, wet with mildew and shadow. The small bell at his wrist, etched with the character Shoku, stayed unnervingly still. But this isn't the time for idle words. The brim of his hat cast his face in shadow, revealing only a grayish jaw and bloodless, pressed lips. His tone was cold, almost mocking. "The merchant you are guarding? His cargo is already at sea. Mission complete, isn't it? So why sink deeper into the mud of D port? What did Wasabi Jiroko promise you that's worth gambling your life?" The wood clone's face betrayed nothing. "Listen, Konoha Shinobi." Genshoku's voice dropped lower, edged with a sinister pull. "The Wasabi estate is lively tonight. Old man Jiroko may not live to see dawn. Staying here won't change that." "Why not?" He paused deliberately, the bell on his wrist giving the faintest tremor. "Leave D port. I guarantee safe passage. Take your reward, and go back to Konoha alive."
"Oh."
Rosh's calm reply cut through the night like steel. "You speak as though you know exactly what's happening at Wasabi House. Then tell me." His gaze pressed down on Genshoku, heavy as iron. "Who do you represent, to offer such guarantees?" Inside and outside the window, their eyes clashed in the silent air. The dead port, locked under martial law, seemed to fill with the invisible smoke of a battle about to ignite.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.